There's a special kind of grief that comes from not knowing. It settles into your bones and never quite leaves, hanging over a community like fog that won't lift. 4 years ago, 2 teenage girls disappeared from a small mountain town. Search parties looked everywhere. Families waited. Investigators followed every lead until there was nothing left to follow. Mae Whitlow, a woman in her early 60s, had accepted that some questions don't get answers. She hiked these mountains for decades with her dog Scout, making peace with the silence. Then one morning, Scout led her to a hidden cave. Inside, Mae found a bracelet that belonged to one of the missing girls. What happened in that cave, and why did it take 4 years to find? Before we continue, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Mae Whitlow had learned long ago that the mountains didn't give up their secrets easily. She'd lived in Pine Ridge for 32 years, ever since she and her late husband Robert had decided that city life wasn't for them anymore. They'd wanted space, clean air, and the kind of quiet that let you hear yourself think. Robert had been gone for 8 years now, taken by a heart attack on a Sunday morning while reading the paper on their porch. Mae still lived in the same cabin they'd built together, still walked the same trails they'd explored hand in hand. The town of Pine Ridge sat in a valley surrounded by the Cascade Mountains, population hovering around 3,000 souls, who mostly preferred it that way. It was the kind of place where people knew your name at the post office, where the diner served the same menu it had for 40 years, where newcomers were regarded with polite suspicion until they'd proven they belonged. Mae had earned her place through time and respect. She didn't talk much, but when she did, people listened. She knew these mountains better than almost anyone alive. Her daily routine rarely varied. Up at dawn, coffee on the porch, while Scout, a 6-year-old German shepherd with intelligent brown eyes, stretched and yawned beside her. Breakfast, then the trails. Mae had a rotation of paths she followed, checking on landmarks she'd noted in her leather trail journal over the years. That journal had become something of a Bible to her, filled with sketches of unusual rock formations, notes about seasonal changes, observations about wildlife patterns, and personal reflections she'd never share with another soul. Scout had been a gift from her daughter Claire 3 years ago, back when they were still speaking regularly. Claire lived in Singapore now, married to a businessman Mae had met exactly twice. Their relationship had fractured slowly, the way a tree splits under the weight of ice, not dramatically but inevitably. Claire wanted her mother to move closer, to live in a city, to stop hiding in the woods. Mae wanted Claire to understand that she wasn't hiding. She was home. The disagreement had calcified into silence. They exchanged brief emails on birthdays and holidays, surface pleasantries that said nothing real. Mae carried that grief differently than the one for Robert. Her husband's death had been clean, final, painful but comprehensible. The distance from Claire was muddier, a wound that never quite healed because it never quite closed. But Mae had Scout and she had the trails. And most days, that was enough. She remembered exactly where she'd been when Emma Miller and Lily Chen disappeared. It was a September morning 4 years and 2 months ago. Mae had been restocking supplies at Hendrick's General Store when Tom Brennan, the county sheriff and an old friend, came in with a look on his face that turned her stomach. The Miller girl and her friend didn't come home last night, he'd said, his voice tight. Emma and Lily. They told their folks they were going to the falls for the afternoon. Never showed up for dinner. The town mobilized immediately. Search parties formed within hours. Mae joined them, of course, bringing her knowledge of the terrain and her methodical approach to tracking. She'd known both girls, though not well. Emma had been in a youth hiking group Mae had led volunteer sessions for a few years back, teaching basic wilderness safety, how to read trails, what to do if you got lost. Emma had been attentive, curious, the kind of kid who asked good questions. Lily had tagged along once or twice, quieter than her friend, but watchful. They'd searched for 3 weeks straight. Helicopters, dog teams, volunteers from neighboring counties. They combed every known trail, every camping spot, every cave system that was on the maps. Mae had covered miles of rough country, calling their names until her voice gave out. looking for any sign, a footprint, a piece of clothing. Anything. They found nothing. The FBI came in, interviewed everyone, investigated every angle. Foul play seemed likely, but there were no suspects, no witnesses, no evidence. It was as if the girls had simply vanished into the mountain air. The Miller family, Rebecca and David, along with their younger son Marcus, became ghosts themselves. Hollow-eyed and moving through town like sleepwalkers, the Chen family, Thomas and his wife Lynn, seemed to age a decade in a month. Mae watched the community fracture under the weight of unanswered questions. Neighbors eyed each other with new suspicion. Rumors circulated. Maybe the girls had run away. Maybe they'd been taken by drifters. Maybe something worse. By the 6-month mark, the official search had been scaled back to occasional reviews of the cold case. By a year, people stopped talking about it as much, though the pain never really left. It just went underground, a shared trauma the town carried silently. Mae had never stopped thinking about those girls. Sometimes, out on a trail, she'd find herself looking for them without meaning to, scanning tree lines, checking unusual rock formations, listening for sounds that didn't belong. It became a habit, a low-level hum of awareness that never quite shut off. She'd written about it in her trail journal, pages of speculation and guilt. Had she missed something during the search? Was there a trail she'd overlooked, a cave she'd dismissed as too small or too obvious? The questions circled like vultures, never landing but never leaving either. Life went on because it had to. Mae kept hiking. The seasons turned. Pine Ridge slowly learned to live with the wound of not knowing. Then came that foggy morning in late October. 4 years after the girls disappeared, Mae had planned a route she didn't take often, a ridge trail that offered views of the valley but required a steep climb that was getting harder on her knees. She was 63 now, still strong, but feeling her age more than she cared to admit. Scout bounded ahead as always, nose to the ground, tail wagging with the pure joy of being outside. The fog was unusually thick, rolling through the pines like something alive. Visibility dropped to maybe 30 feet, turning the familiar forest into something strange and dreamlike. Mae almost turned back, hiking in fog, like this was risky, even for someone with her experience. But Scout seemed determined, pulling forward with unusual insistence. "All right, boy," Mae said, her breath misting in the cold air. "Lead the way." They left the main trail about 20 minutes in. Scout veered left, down a slope Mae had always assumed led nowhere, just dense undergrowth and loose rock, not worth exploring. But the dog was adamant, whining and looking back at her with those intelligent eyes that seemed to say, "Trust me." Mae trusted him. She followed, picking her way carefully through the brush, using her hiking pole for balance. The slope evened out into a small ravine she'd never noticed before, hidden by the way the rock formations overlapped. The fog made everything feel close and muffled, like the mountain was holding its breath. That's when Scout stopped, stiff-legged and alert, staring at what looked like a solid rock wall covered in moss and hanging ferns. Mae approached slowly. Up close, she could see that the moss concealed an opening, not large, maybe 4 feet high and 3 feet wide, but definitely a cave entrance. The rock formation had hidden it perfectly. You could walk past this spot 100 times and never see it unless you knew exactly where to look. Her heart began to beat faster. In 30-plus years of hiking these mountains, she'd never seen this cave. She pulled out her phone and checked her GPS app, marking the location. Then she took a small flashlight from her pack. "Stay here, Scout," she commanded. The dog sat obediently, though his eyes never left the cave entrance. Mae ducked through the opening, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The cave opened up immediately into a space about the size of a small bedroom, with a ceiling high enough to stand in. The air smelled of earth and dampness and something else, something that made her freeze, the smell of recent human habitation. Her light swept the space. In the beam, she saw things that didn't belong in a wild cave. A pile of old blankets in one corner, ratty and stained, but definitely manufactured. Food wrappers, granola bar packaging, empty water bottles, a makeshift fire ring made of stones with old ashes still visible, and on the walls, drawings. Mae stepped closer, her hands trembling. The drawings were crude, done in what looked like charcoal. Tally marks in groups of 5, covering one section of wall, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Calendar-like grids with dates scratched beside them. And words, desperate words, carved or written in shaky letters. Help us. Cold, hungry. Please. Mae's throat tightened. Her light moved across the cave, cataloguing details with the methodical part of her brain, even as the emotional part was screaming. More evidence of long-term habitation. A corner that had clearly been used as a latrine, crude shelving made from branches. A collection of rocks arranged in some kind of pattern. Then her light caught on something small and metallic, half buried in the dirt floor near the blankets. Mae bent down, her knees protesting. She pulled a pen from her pocket and used it to carefully uncover the object without touching it directly. It was a bracelet, silver, tarnished now with small charms hanging from it. A tiny book, a musical note, a heart with initials inside. Mae knew that bracelet. She'd seen it 4 years ago, in the photos that had been circulated during the search. Emma Miller had been wearing it in her school picture, the one that had been posted on telephone poles and shared across social media. The world tilted. Mae sat down hard on the cave floor, her light still trained on the bracelet, her mind racing. The girls had been here, maybe for a long time, judging by the tally marks. Maybe recently, judging by how fresh some of the food wrappers looked. Maybe they were still alive. Mae's hands shook as she pulled out her phone. No signal in the cave. She took photographs of everything. Wide shots of the space, close-ups of the drawings, the bracelet, the food wrappers. Her training kicked in. Document everything, disturb nothing, get help. She backed out of the cave carefully, emerged into the fog where Scout waited, and pulled out her phone again. One bar of signal. It would have to do. She dialed Tom Brennan's number. He answered on the second ring. Tom, Mae said, her voice steadier than she felt. I found something. Something about the Miller and Chen girls. You need to get up here now. The hike back to the main trail felt like moving through water. Mae's legs worked automatically, while her mind spun through implications and possibilities. Scout stayed close to her side, sensing her agitation. The fog was beginning to lift, but Mae barely noticed. She kept seeing those tally marks, those desperate words on the cave wall. She reached her truck in the parking area and sat in the driver's seat, engine running for heat, waiting for Tom. Her hands had finally stopped shaking, replaced by a strange calm that came from years of handling crises in the wilderness. You didn't panic when someone was injured on a trail or when weather turned dangerous. You assessed, you planned, you acted, but this wasn't a broken ankle or an incoming storm. This was 2 girls who'd been missing for 4 years, and Mae had just found evidence that changed everything. Tom Brennan's sheriff's SUV pulled in 40 minutes later, lights flashing. He was out of the vehicle before it fully stopped, his face tight with the same expression she'd seen 4 years ago. Tom was 58, with iron-grey hair and the solid build of someone who'd spent his life in physical work. They'd known each other since Mae and Robert first moved to Pine Ridge. Tom had helped them navigate local permits for their cabin, had become a friend over shared dinners and occasional fishing trips. Show me, he said without preamble. Mae led him and his deputy, a younger man named Chris Wallace, back up the trail. She moved faster this time, knowing the route. The fog had burned off enough to see clearly now, autumn sun filtering through the pine canopy. Under different circumstances, it would have been a beautiful morning. At the cave entrance, Tom stopped and stared. I'll be damned, he said quietly. I've patrolled these mountains for 30 years. Never knew this was here, neither did I, Mae said. Scout found it. Tom pulled out his own flashlight and camera. You went inside? I did. I tried not to disturb anything, but I needed to see. Mae pulled out her phone, showing him the photos she'd taken. Tom, look at the dates on some of those calendar markings. They go back years. And the bracelet, that's Emma's, I'm sure of it. Tom's jaw tightened as he scrolled through the images. Chris, get crime scene up here. And call the FBI field office. Tell them we need Agent Voss back here immediately. He looked at Mae. You did good. Real good. Now we need to process this properly. They waited while Chris made the calls. Tom studied the cave entrance from different angles, taking his own photographs of the exterior, the approach, the way the rock formations concealed it. Someone could have kept them here, Tom said, more to himself than to Mae. Close enough to town that they could get supplies, remote enough that no one would find them. His face darkened. Jesus, 4 years. Some of that food packaging looks recent, Mae said. Within the last few months, maybe. Tom, what if they're still alive? What if whoever had them moved them recently? One thing at a time, Tom said, but his eyes showed he was thinking the same thing. Let's secure this scene and get experts up here. We can't afford to miss anything. The crime scene team arrived within 2 hours, along with 2 FBI agents from the Seattle field office. Mae watched from a distance as they photographed, measured, and carefully bagged evidence. The cave became a hive of controlled activity, people in protective suits moving with precise choreography. Agent Sarah Voss arrived in the afternoon. Mae remembered her from 4 years ago. A woman in her mid-40s with sharp eyes and an economy of movement that spoke of military or law enforcement background. Voss had led the FBI's investigation into the girl's disappearance, had interviewed Mae along with everyone else in Pine Ridge, had worked the case until the leads dried up. Miss Whitlow, Voss said, approaching where Mae sat on a fallen log with Scout. Sheriff Brennan says you found the cave. My dog found it, Mae corrected. I just followed him. Voss sat down beside her, pulling out a tablet. I need you to walk me through everything, every detail, no matter how small. Start from when you began your hike this morning. Mae told it all. The fog, Scout's unusual behavior, the discovery of the cave entrance, what she'd seen inside, the bracelet. Voss listened without interrupting, making notes on her tablet. The bracelet, Voss said when Mae finished. You're certain it belonged to Emma Miller? I am. I saw it in the search photos 4 years ago. Silver chain, those specific charms, the book, the musical note, the heart. It's hers, Voss nodded slowly. We'll confirm that with the family, but I trust your identification. You've got a good eye for detail. She looked toward the cave where the forensic team was still working. The preliminary assessment matches what you described. Whoever was in that cave was there for an extended period. We found more evidence of habitation than what you saw initially. Different layers, suggesting they came and went, or that the space was used over multiple time periods. The girls, Mae asked. Do you think they were actually alive all this time? I don't know yet, Voss said honestly, but we're going to find out. The forensic team is collecting everything, fibers, hair, DNA samples, fingerprints if there are any. We'll analyze the food wrappers for dates, the drawings for handwriting analysis. We'll process every inch of that cave. Mae watched the agents work, feeling both useful and helpless. She'd found something crucial, but now it was out of her hands. Ms. Whitlow, Voss said after a moment. Mae, you understand that this is going to get very intense very quickly. Once word gets out that we've found new evidence, the media will descend on Pine Ridge again. The families will be... She paused, searching for words. This is going to reopen a lot of wounds. I know, Mae said quietly. You're going to be at the center of it. The person who found the cave. Reporters will want interviews. People will have questions. Voss met her eyes. Are you prepared for that? Mae thought about her quiet life, her solitary hikes, her preference for silence over attention. Then she thought about Rebecca Miller's hollow eyes at the community vigil 4 years ago, about the Chen family's grief, about 2 teenage girls who'd been 17 and 16 when they disappeared. I'll do whatever helps find them, Mae said. Voss studied her for a moment, then nodded with what looked like respect. Good, because I'm going to need your help. You know these mountains. You've got instincts that found something dozens of searchers missed 4 years ago. Stay available. If we need you, I want to be able to call. Of course. As the afternoon wore into evening, Mae finally headed home. Tom had taken her statement officially. Voss had her contact information, and there was nothing more she could do at the scene. Scout was exhausted from the day's unusual activity, curling up in the passenger seat of her truck. Mae drove the familiar roads back to her cabin, her mind unable to settle. She kept seeing those tally marks on the cave wall, kept doing the math. If each mark was a day, there were over 1,000 of them. More than 3 years of marks, each one representing another day of captivity, another day of hope or despair, or just survival. At home, Mae couldn't eat. She sat on her porch with Scout at her feet, watching the sun set over the mountains. The view was the same as always, peaks painted orange and purple, shadows deepening in the valleys, but somehow it looked different now. The mountains she'd loved for 3 decades suddenly felt menacing, full of secrets and dark spaces. Her phone rang just after 8. "Tom's number. Thought you'd want to know," he said. We showed Rebecca Miller the photos of the bracelet. She confirmed it's Emma's, broke down completely. "We've got counselors with the families now." Mae closed her eyes. "Any word from the forensic team?" "They're still processing. But Mae, they found something else in the cave. A page from what looks like a diary. Water damaged, hard to read, but it's definitely Emma's handwriting. We compared it to her school papers." Mae's heart hammered. "What does it say?" "Not much that's legible, but there are dates visible. Mae, the most recent one is from 3 months ago. The world seemed to stop. 3 months ago. Not 4 years ago, not ancient history. 3 months. They could still be alive," Mae whispered. "We don't know that for certain," Tom said carefully. "But yeah, it's possible. We're treating this as an active case now, not a cold one. FBI is bringing in more resources. We're going to find out what happened in that cave, and we're going to find those girls if there's any chance they're still out there." After they hung up, Mae sat in the darkness for a long time. Scout had fallen asleep, his breathing deep and even. The night sounds of the forest surrounded her, owls calling, small animals rustling in the undergrowth. The wind through the pines. Somewhere out there, possibly still in these mountains, were 2 girls who'd been missing for 4 years. And now, for the first time since they vanished, there was hope. Mae thought about the diary page, about Emma writing those words just 3 months ago. What had she written? What had she endured? Where was she now? The questions wouldn't let her rest. Mae went inside and pulled out her own trail journal, the leather cover worn smooth from years of handling. She flipped to a blank page and began to write, documenting everything about today in precise detail. The location where Scout had led her, the appearance of the cave entrance, every observation she'd made inside. Then she started going backward through her journal, looking at her notes from the past 4 years. Had she hiked near that area before? Had she noticed anything unusual and dismissed it? The guilt that had lived quietly in her chest for 4 years suddenly had weight and teeth. She found an entry from 3 years ago. A note about seeing smoke rising from an area she'd thought was uninhabited. She'd assumed it was campers or maybe a controlled burn. She'd mentioned it to Tom at the time, casually, and they'd both shrugged it off. Mae stared at those words now, written in her own hand. Smoke. In an area that should have been empty. 3 years ago, when the girls would have already been captive for a year, had she been close? Had she seen evidence of where they were being held and simply not recognized it? The guilt settled deeper, a cold weight in her chest. But alongside it came something else, determination. She'd found the cave. She'd given the investigation something to work with. And if there was more to find, if those girls were still out there somewhere, Mae would do everything in her power to help bring them home. She looked at Scout, sleeping peacefully by the fireplace. "Good boy," she whispered. "We're not done yet." Outside, the mountains held their secrets. But Mae Whitlow had spent 30 years learning how to read them. Tomorrow the real search would begin. Mae woke before dawn, having slept poorly. Her dreams had been fragmented and disturbing, searching through endless caves, hearing voices calling for help that she couldn't locate, finding Emma's bracelet over and over again in different places. She gave up on sleep at 5:30, made coffee, and was sitting on her porch when the first light touched the peaks. Tom called at 7. "They want you back at the cave site. Agent Voss specifically requested you. Can you be ready in 30 minutes? "I'm already dressed," Mae said. The scene at the cave had transformed overnight. What had been a small operation yesterday was now a full-scale investigation. Multiple vehicles lined the old logging road. A command tent had been erected, and at least a dozen people in various uniforms moved with purpose between stations. Voss emerged from the command tent when Mae arrived. She looked like she hadn't slept either, but her eyes were sharp and focused. "Mae, thank you for coming back. I want you to walk me through the exact route you took yesterday. Every detail of Scout's behavior, anything unusual you observed." They spent 2 hours retracing Mae's steps from the parking area to the cave. Mae pointed out where Scout had first veered off the main trail, the specific way he'd moved through the undergrowth, where he'd stopped and stared at the cave entrance. Voss had 2 other agents with her, documenting everything, taking measurements, photographing sightlines. He was certain, Mae said, watching Scout sniff around the area. Not exploring, not just following a random scent. He had purpose. "I've been hiking with him for 3 years. I know his behavior." "This was different. What made you trust him enough to follow?" Voss asked. Mae considered the question. "Because he's never led me wrong before. And because something about this area felt off. I can't explain it better than that. After 30 years in these mountains, you develop instincts." Voss nodded. "We're going to need those instincts. Come back to the command tent. There's something we need to show you." Inside the tent, a table was covered with evidence bags and photographs. Voss pulled up a chair for Mae and spread out several clear bags containing paper fragments. "This is the diary page we found," Voss said, handling the evidence carefully. "It's badly water damaged, but our lab was able to enhance some of the writing." "I want you to look at it." Mae studied the page through the clear plastic. The handwriting was shaky, the ink smeared and faded in places, but words were visible. "Can't tell how long anymore. Lily is getting weaker. He says we're safe here, but this isn't safe, this is prison. Mom, if you ever read this, I'm so sorry. We tried to get away, but he always—" The rest dissolved into illegible smears. Mae's throat tightened. She was writing to her mother. "Yes," Voss said quietly. "That's Emma's handwriting. We've confirmed it with multiple samples. The he she references. We believe she's talking about her captor. Singular pronoun, always he, which suggests one person, likely male. And Lily," Mae said. "She mentions Lily getting weaker. They were together. That's our assessment. Both girls were in that cave, possibly for an extended period. The condition of the paper suggests it's been in the cave for months, maybe since it was written. The date we could make out was 3 months ago, late July." Mae looked up at Voss. "What else have you found?" Voss pulled out more photographs. The tally marks on the wall total 1,247. If each mark represents 1 day, that's approximately 3 years and 5 months. But we also found something interesting. She laid out a photo showing a section of the cave wall. "Look at the handwriting and the calendar markings." Mae leaned closer. The photo showed crude calendar grids with notations beside them. Some of the writing was neat, careful. The sections were larger, more erratic. 2 different hands, Mae said. "Exactly. We believe both girls were making marks, keeping time. The forensic handwriting analyst thinks the neater markings are Emma's. The others are Lily's. They were both alive and conscious enough to track time for at least 3 years. The implications settled over Mae. 3 years of captivity, of marking days on a cave wall, of sleeping on dirty blankets and eating whatever their captor provided. 3 years of hope fading and being rekindled and fading again. "There's more," Voss said. She pulled out another evidence bag, this one containing what looked like a crude map drawn on a piece of cardboard. "We found this tucked in a crevice, protected from moisture." "It's a hand-drawn map," Mae studied it. The map showed rough trails, water sources marked with wavy lines, and several locations marked with X's. But what caught her attention was a notation in one corner. "Safe place," with an arrow pointing to a spot that didn't match any known structures. "Do you recognize any of these landmarks?" Voss asked. Mae pulled out her phone, opening her GPS mapping app. She compared the hand-drawn map to the topographical display. "This ridgeline here, that could be Cathedral Peak, and this stream might be Willow Creek, but this location marked safe place. If I'm reading this right, it's about 3 miles northeast of the cave. There's nothing there on any official maps, just forest and old-growth timber. Could there be a structure? An abandoned cabin, a hunting blind, anything?" There could be, Mae said slowly. That area used to have logging operations 40, 50 years ago. There might be old equipment sheds or worker shelters that aren't on modern maps. I've never hiked that specific area. The approach is rough, not worth the effort for the views you get. Voss was already on her radio, calling in coordinates. We need to search that area. If this map is accurate and the girls drew it, they were trying to indicate another location. Maybe where they were being held after they left the cave. Within an hour, 2 search teams were assembled. Mae found herself paired with Agent Voss, 2 FBI agents she didn't know, and a deputy from the county sheriff's office. They had topographical maps, GPS units, and the hand-drawn map in a protective sleeve for reference. The hike northeast from the cave was exactly as rough as Mae had predicted. The terrain was steep and covered in deadfall, making progress slow. Scout moved ahead, occasionally looking back to make sure Mae was keeping up. At 63, she was the oldest person in the group by at least 15 years, but she kept pace through sheer determination and familiarity with mountain hiking. They'd been walking for 90 minutes when Mae called a halt. "Hold on," she said, studying their surroundings. Something felt familiar, though she couldn't quite place it. She pulled out her trail journal, flipping back through pages. "What is it?" Voss asked. 3 years ago, Mae said, finding the entry. "I noted seeing smoke from approximately this area. I was on the Western Ridge Trail, looking east, and I saw smoke rising above the tree line. I mentioned it to Sheriff Brennan, but we both assumed it was campers or a controlled burn." Voss's expression sharpened. "Show me exactly where you were when you saw it." Mae pulled up her GPS history. She'd been religiously tracking her hikes for years. "I was here," she said, pointing to a location on the map. "The smoke was rising from roughly this direction, which would put it," she calculated quickly, "right in the area we're heading toward now. 3 years ago would have been just after the girls were taken," Voss said quietly. "If someone was keeping them in this area, they'd need fire for warmth, for cooking." The possibility that Mae had seen evidence of the girls' location 3 years ago and hadn't recognized it made her feel physically ill. But Voss put a hand on her arm. "You had no reason to think it was connected," she said firmly. "Campfire smoke in the mountains isn't unusual. Don't do that to yourself." But Mae couldn't help it. The guilt settled deeper. They pushed forward with renewed urgency. Scout's behavior changed as they got closer to the coordinates. He became more alert, whining softly, his tail dropping low. Mae recognized the signs. He'd found something. "Everyone stop," Mae said quietly. "Scout's indicating something ahead." The group halted, hands moving to weapons. They were in a small clearing surrounded by old-growth Douglas fir. At first, Mae saw nothing unusual. Then Voss pointed. "There, 30 meters ahead. Do you see it?" Mae looked where she indicated, and her breath caught. Partially concealed by undergrowth and fallen branches was a structure. Not a tent or temporary shelter, an actual building, small and weathered but solid. It was an old hunting cabin, probably built 50 years ago and forgotten. The roof was intact, the walls were standing, and most tellingly, there was a faint trail leading to the door. Recent footprints in the mud. A stack of firewood under a lean-to. Signs of occupation. The FBI agents moved forward tactically, weapons drawn. "Federal agents! Anyone inside, make yourself known." Silence. They approached carefully, covering each other. One agent tried the door. It was locked with a simple padlock. Bolt cutters made quick work of it. The door swung open. Mae stayed back with Scout, her heart hammering. Part of her terrified they'd find the girls inside. Part of her terrified they wouldn't. The agents emerged 5 minutes later. "Clear," one of them called. "No one inside." "But you need to see this." Mae followed Voss into the cabin. It was one room, maybe 15 feet by 20 feet. There was a wood stove, a rough table, sleeping pallets on the floor, and shelves stocked with canned goods and supplies. Everything was crude but functional, and everywhere there were signs of the girls. Drawings pinned to the walls, childlike sketches of mountains and birds, and what might have been memories of home. More tally marks carved into the wooden walls. A corner that had clearly been set up as a sleeping area, with 2 separate pallets, blankets that looked newer than the ones in the cave. On the table, Mae saw something that made her stop breathing. A wooden stick about 8 inches long with notches carved into it. She moved closer, counting 1,247 notches, the same number as the tally marks in the cave. They were moved, Voss said, standing beside her. They started in the cave, kept count there, then were brought here. And they kept counting on this stick. Mae's hands trembled as she photographed the calendar stick. This means they were here recently. Look at the freshness of the firewood, the lack of dust on these supplies. Someone's been maintaining this place. Agreed, Voss said. She was already on her radio, calling in the forensic team. We're going to process every inch of this cabin. Hair samples, fingerprints, DNA, anything that can tell us who else has been here and where they might have gone. Mae stepped outside, needing air. Scout pressed against her leg, sensing her distress. She looked around the clearing, trying to think like someone who'd been held captive. If you were here, if you managed to escape or were being moved again, which direction would you go? The terrain sloped downward to the east, toward lower elevations and eventually toward town. To the west was higher elevation, more remote. North and south offered similar challenges, dense forest, no clear trails. She walked the perimeter of the clearing slowly, Scout beside her. On the eastern edge, something caught her eye. A broken branch at about chest height, the break fresh. She looked closer and saw what might have been a footprint in the soft earth, small, probably female. Agent Voss, Mae called. I think I found something. Voss came quickly. Mae showed her the broken branch and the possible footprint. Could be one of the girls, Voss said. Could be someone else. We'll document it. She looked at Mae with something like understanding. You're thinking they might have escaped, that they're out there right now. It's possible, isn't it? If they were moved from the cave to here, if someone's been keeping them all this time, and now we're closing in, maybe they ran. Maybe they finally got a chance. Voss nodded slowly. Or maybe whoever had them got spooked by our investigation and moved them again. Either way, the trail is warm. That's more than we've had in 4 years. The forensic team arrived and took over the cabin. Mae and Voss hiked back to the command post as afternoon shadows lengthened. Mae's legs ached and her mind was exhausted, but she felt something she hadn't felt in days, a clear sense of purpose. At the parking area, a small group of people waited. Mae recognized Rebecca Miller immediately. Emma's mother looked older than her 45 years, her face lined with grief and desperate hope. Beside her stood a tall Asian man with similar exhaustion in his eyes, Thomas Chen, Lily's father. Rebecca approached Mae the moment she saw her. Miss Whitlow, she said, her voice breaking. Sheriff Brennan said you found the cave. That you found Emma's bracelet. Mae didn't know what to say. I'm sorry it took so long. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. Don't apologize. You found what no one else could find. You gave us hope again. She reached out and took Mae's hands. Her grip was desperate, searching. Do you think she's alive? Do you really think my baby is still alive? Mae looked at this woman who'd spent 4 years in a grief that never ended, and she couldn't bring herself to offer false comfort. I don't know, she said honestly, but I know the evidence suggests she was alive 3 months ago. I know we found signs that both girls were together, and I know we're not going to stop looking until we find them. Thomas Chen stepped forward. My wife didn't survive this, he said quietly. The not knowing, it killed her. 2 years after Lily disappeared, Lynn had a heart attack. The doctors said it was stress-induced. She's gone, and Lily doesn't even know. His voice caught. I need to find my daughter. I need to tell her that her mother loved her until the very end. Mae felt the weight of their pain, like a physical thing. We'll find them, she heard herself say. I promise you we won't stop until we do. It was a promise she had no right to make, but looking at their faces, she meant every word. That night, Mae couldn't sleep again. She sat at her kitchen table with her trail journal open, cross-referencing her notes from the past 4 years with the locations they'd discovered. Scout lay at her feet, occasionally lifting his head when Mae shifted position. The phone rang at midnight. Mae grabbed it immediately, her heart racing. Tom's number. They found something else in the cabin, he said without preamble. Hidden in a crevice behind the wood stove. Another map, more detailed than the first one. Mae, it shows trails, water sources, and what looks like a third location. Agent Voss wants you at the command post at 6 a.m. Mae was there at 5:30. The command tent was already buzzing with activity. Voss had clearly been up all night, surrounded by maps and photographs. She waved Mae over to the main table. "Look at this," Voss said, spreading out the new map. It was drawn on what looked like the back of food packaging, the lines careful and deliberate. "This is more sophisticated than the first map. Someone with knowledge of the terrain drew this." Mae studied it carefully. The map showed the cave, the cabin, and a third location marked with a star. There were notations about trail conditions, warnings about steep drops, and markers for water sources. In one corner, written in tiny letters, were the words "safe place" with an arrow. "This handwriting is different from the diary page," Mae said. "It's more confident, more practiced. We noticed that too," Voss said. "The lab is analyzing it now, but initial assessment suggests this wasn't drawn by either girl. Someone else made this map." Mae felt a chill. "Someone who knew the mountains. Someone local. That's our theory. We're comparing the handwriting to samples from everyone interviewed 4 years ago. It's a long shot, but if we can identify who drew this, we might identify who took them." Mae pulled out her phone and overlaid the hand-drawn map with her GPS mapping app. "If I'm reading this right, the third location is about 5 miles northwest of the cabin. That puts it," she zoomed in on her map, "in the old fire lookout tower area." Voss leaned over her shoulder. "Fire lookout tower? Built in the 1950s for wildfire spotting," Mae explained. "It was decommissioned 20 years ago, condemned as structurally unsafe. The access trail has been closed for at least 15 years. Most people don't even remember it's there. But you do. I hiked up there once, maybe 25 years ago, before it was condemned. The trail is brutal, steep switchbacks, loose rock, narrow ridges. I never went back because it wasn't worth the danger for the view." Mae looked at Voss. "But if someone wanted a remote place where no one would look, and where you could see anyone approaching from miles away, that tower would be perfect. We need to get up there," Voss said. Today, 2 hours later, Mae found herself leading another expedition, this time with a larger team. Besides Voss and several FBI agents, they had search and rescue specialists and 2 deputies who knew the area. The approach to the old fire lookout tower was everything Mae remembered, treacherous and exhausting. Scout moved ahead with confidence, his tracking instincts engaged. Mae watched him carefully. About 3 miles into the hike, his behavior changed again. He stopped, sniffed the air, and his tail went rigid. "He's got something," Mae said quietly. The team halted. One of the FBI agents moved forward to investigate where Scout was focused. He bent down, examining something on the ground, then looked back at Voss. "Footprints," he said. "Small, recent, maybe 2-3 days old." Mae's heart hammered. She moved closer to look. The prints were partially obscured by leaf litter, but they were definitely there. Small feet, possibly female, heading in the direction they were already traveling. "Could be one of the girls," Voss said. "Or could be hikers who ignored the trail closure signs. We won't know until we follow." They continued with heightened alertness. The trail, what was left of it, became more dangerous as they climbed. At one point, they had to navigate a narrow ridge with sheer drops on both sides. Mae's knees protested the climb, her age showing, but she pushed through. Then Scout stopped again, this time fixated on a small cairn of rocks beside the trail. Mae approached carefully and saw something tucked between the stones, a piece of fabric deliberately placed. She used a stick to pull it free without touching it directly. It was a broken friendship necklace, the kind teenage girls wore, half of a heart with "best" engraved on it. The matching piece would say "friends." "Bag this," Voss said immediately to the evidence technician. She turned to Mae. "You recognize this?" "No, but—" Mae pulled out her phone, scrolling through the case files she'd been given access to. She found a photograph from Lily Chen's room, taken during the original investigation. On Lily's dresser, in a photo with Emma, both girls were wearing friendship necklaces. Mae showed the image to Voss. "Lily's necklace. She's leaving us breadcrumbs. She's alive," Voss breathed. "And she's trying to help us find her." The discovery energized the team. They moved faster now, following the trail with renewed urgency. Mae's exhaustion faded under a surge of adrenaline. These girls were out there, possibly close, possibly trying to reach safety. The fire lookout tower appeared through the trees an hour later. It was a wooden structure on stilts, maybe 40 feet high, accessible only by an external staircase that looked like it might collapse at any moment. The building itself showed signs of age and weather damage, but Mae could see smoke rising from a small chimney pipe. Someone was inside. The team spread out, taking positions around the base of the tower. Voss pulled out a megaphone while the tactical agents prepared for a potential confrontation. "This is the FBI," Voss called out. "We know you're in there. We need you to come out with your hands visible." Silence. "Then movement in the tower!" A shadow passed behind one of the dirty windows. "We don't want anyone to get hurt," Voss continued. "We just want to talk. Come to the door where we can see you." More silence. Mae watched the tower windows, her hands clenched at her sides. Scout pressed against her leg, whining softly. Then the door opened. A man appeared on the landing at the top of the stairs. He was in his 30s, thin and bearded, wearing outdoor clothing that had seen better days. His hands were visible but empty. "Don't come any closer," he shouted down. "This is private property. You're trespassing." "This is federal land," Voss called back. "We're investigating the disappearance of 2 young women. We need to search that structure. There's nobody here but me," the man said. "I have a right to be here." "What's your name?" Voss asked, a pause. "Michael." "Michael Sutton." Mae felt recognition flicker. Sutton, she knew that name, though she couldn't immediately place it. Tom Brennan, who'd joined them via radio link, came through on Voss's earpiece loud enough for Mae to hear. "Michael Sutton. Got a record. Minor stuff, trespassing, resisting arrest, lives off the grid. His family owned property near here 40 years ago. We interviewed him 4 years ago about the girls. He had no connection to them, solid alibi for the day they disappeared. But Voss's expression said she wasn't buying it. "Mr. Sutton, we're coming up. You can cooperate or we can do this the hard way." "You can't," Sutton began, but he was interrupted by a sound from inside the tower. A girl's voice, high and frightened. "Help, please, we're in here." Everything happened fast. Tactical agents rushed the stairs, despite the danger of the structure. Sutton tried to close the door, but an agent was already there, forcing it open. Mae heard scuffling, shouting, then Sutton being brought out in handcuffs. Still protesting, but Mae's attention was on the tower door, where 2 more agents emerged, each supporting a young woman. They were thin, dirty, wearing clothes that hung on their frames. Their hair was matted, and they moved slowly, weakly, but they were alive, Emma Miller and Lily Chen. After 4 years, 3 months and 17 days, alive. Mae's knees went weak. She sat down hard on the ground, tears streaming down her face. Scout licked at her hands, sensing her emotional state, but Mae couldn't move. She could only watch as medical teams rushed forward, as the girls were wrapped in emergency blankets, as their vital signs were checked. Rebecca Miller's daughter was alive. Thomas Chen's daughter was alive. The girls Mae had promised to find. They'd found them. Voss came over to Mae, helping her to her feet. The FBI agent's professional composure had cracked. There were tears on her face, too. "You did it," Voss said quietly. "Your instincts, your knowledge of these mountains, your determination, you brought them home." Mae shook her head. "Scout found them, and they found themselves. That necklace, the breadcrumbs, Lily was helping us." "All of it together," Voss said. "Come on, the girls are asking for you." Mae approached the medical staging area on shaky legs. Emma and Lily were sitting on emergency blankets, paramedics checking them over, but both girls looked up when Mae approached. Emma's eyes widened with recognition. "Ms. Whitlow, from the hiking group." Mae nodded, not trusting her voice. "You found us," Emma said, her voice cracking. "We heard the search parties. We tried to signal, but he—" She glanced toward where Sutton was being loaded into a police vehicle. "He wouldn't let us. But we knew someone would come eventually. We knew." Lily reached out and grabbed Mae's hand. The girl didn't speak, but her grip was fierce and desperate. "You're safe now," Mae said, finding her voice. "You're both safe. We're taking you home." Emma started to cry, then deep sobs that shook her whole body. Lily joined her, and Mae knelt between them, putting an arm around each girl's shoulders. holding them while they wept out 4 years of fear and pain and hope that had finally been rewarded. Around them, the investigation continued. Evidence was being collected, photographs taken, statements recorded. But in that moment, Mae was only aware of these 2 young women who'd survived something unimaginable and made it through to the other side. "Your mother is waiting," Mae told Emma softly. She never gave up, not for a single day. Emma nodded against Mae's shoulder. Mae looked at Lily. "Your father is waiting too. He needs to see you. There's a lot to talk about, but he needs to see that you're okay." Lily's grip on Mae's hand tightened, and she finally spoke, her voice hoarse from disuse. "My mom?" Mae's heart broke. This was a conversation for later, for counselors and family, but Lily deserved truth. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Your mother passed away 2 years ago, but your father never stopped looking. He never stopped hoping." Lily's face crumpled, but she nodded as if she'd suspected, as if she'd felt it somehow. The paramedics eventually had to separate Mae from the girls so they could do proper medical assessments and prepare them for transport to the hospital. Mae stood back, watching as they were loaded carefully into the medical helicopter that had landed in a clearing nearby. As the helicopter lifted off, Mae felt something shift inside her. For 4 years, she'd carried the weight of those unanswered questions. The guilt of possibly missing clues, the sorrow of a community torn apart by tragedy. Now, watching the helicopter disappear over the tree line carrying 2 survivors, she felt something like redemption. They weren't whole yet. The girls had a long road of recovery ahead. There would be trauma to process, years of life to reclaim, questions that might never be fully answered. But they were alive, and they were going home, and sometimes that was enough. The next 72 hours blurred together in a haze of debriefings, media frenzy, and emotional exhaustion. Mae had tried to retreat to her cabin, to return to her quiet life, but the world had other plans. News crews descended on Pine Ridge like locusts. The story of 2 girls found alive after 4 years of captivity became national news within hours. Mae's name was everywhere. The woman who'd found the cave, whose dog had led her to the first clue, who'd helped guide investigators through the mountains to the final rescue. She refused all interview requests. She disconnected her landline and turned off her cell phone. But reporters still found their way to her property, camping at the end of her driveway until Tom Brennan posted a deputy there to turn them away. "You're a hero," Tom told her on the 3rd day, sitting on her porch while Scout dozed between them. "People want to hear your story." "I'm not a hero," Mae said firmly. "Those girls survived 4 years of hell. They're the heroes." "I just took a walk with my dog." Tom smiled slightly. "You know it's more than that." "Maybe, but I don't need recognition for doing what anyone would have done." What Mae needed was to understand. She'd been given limited information about what the girls had endured, and her imagination filled in the blanks with horrors that kept her awake at night. She needed to know they'd be okay, that the nightmare was truly over. Agent Voss provided some answers when she visited Mae's cabin on the 4th day after the rescue. "Emma and Lily are at Seattle Grace Hospital," Voss said, accepting the coffee Mae offered. "They're malnourished and dehydrated, but physically they're going to recover. Psychologically, that's going to take longer." "What did he do to them?" Mae asked quietly. Voss was silent for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "Sutton kept them isolated, moving them between locations to avoid detection. He manipulated them psychologically, convinced them their families had stopped looking, that the outside world was dangerous, that he was protecting them. Classic captivity trauma. But he didn't." She paused. "There was no sexual assault. That's one thing they've been spared." Mae felt a small measure of relief. "Why did he take them?" "That's where it gets complicated," Voss said. She pulled out a tablet, showing Mae photographs of evidence. "We found journals in the tower written by Sutton. He has a delusional disorder. He believed modern society was corrupt and that he was saving young people from it. Emma and Lily weren't his first targets. We found evidence suggesting he'd been watching other teenagers in the area. They were just the ones he managed to take. How did he do it? How did he get them away from the falls without anyone seeing? He'd been planning it for months. He knew their routines, knew they hiked to the falls regularly. He posed as an injured hiker on the trail, asked for help, then used a stun gun to incapacitate them. Had a vehicle hidden nearby, took them to the cave. The whole thing took maybe 15 minutes, and no one saw because he'd chosen his timing perfectly. Late afternoon on a weekday, when the trails were empty. Mae felt sick, and for 4 years he kept them hidden. He's extremely familiar with this area. Turns out his family used to own a large tract of land near here, back in the 70s. He grew up exploring these mountains. After his parents died and the land was sold, he never stopped coming back. He knew about the cave, the old hunting cabin, the fire tower. He knew routes that weren't on any maps. Someone local, Mae said. I thought I knew everyone in Pine Ridge. Sutton lived on the margins. No permanent address, worked odd jobs for cash, kept to himself. A lot of people recognized his face, but couldn't tell you his name. He was invisible because he wanted to be. Mae thought about that. Someone moving through the community unnoticed, watching, planning. The girls said they tried to escape. Multiple times, Voss confirmed. But Sutton had systems in place. Alarms made from tin cans and wire, ways to track them. And he used psychological manipulation. Convinced them they'd die in the mountains if they tried to leave, that their families had moved on. It's remarkable that they kept their spirits intact enough to keep trying. The calendar stick, Mae said. They never gave up hope. No, they didn't. That's going to be crucial for their recovery. They never fully internalized Sutton's lies. They always believed rescue was possible. Voss showed Mae more evidence. The makeshift calendar systems, drawings the girls had made, attempts at messages that Sutton had destroyed, but forensics had recovered. Each piece told a story of resilience and determination. There's something else, Voss said. Something we haven't released to the media yet. She pulled up another photograph on her tablet. We found this in the fire tower. It was a photograph printed on regular paper. It showed Michael Sutton standing with a woman Mae didn't recognize. Both were smiling, standing in front of what looked like the hunting cabin. Who's that? Mae asked. Linda Sutton, Michael's sister. We've been trying to locate her for 2 days. She's disappeared. Mae's stomach dropped. She was involved. We believe so. Emma and Lily both mentioned a woman who came to the cabin sometimes, who brought supplies, who talked to them about the old ways and natural living. The handwriting analysis on some of the evidence suggests a second person, likely female, was involved in creating the maps and organizing the locations, so Sutton wasn't acting alone, no. And Linda is still out there. We've got alerts out, but she's proven as capable of hiding as her brother. The girls said she wasn't around much toward the end. They think Michael and Linda had a falling out about something. But she's still a person of interest and potentially dangerous. Mae absorbed this new information. The rescue wasn't as complete as she'd thought. One captor caught, another still free. The girls are safe, though, Voss assured her. 24-hour security at the hospital. No one gets near them without clearance. And once they're released, we'll have protection in place. When can they go home? Another week, maybe 2. They need physical therapy, nutritional support, and initial psychological counseling before they're stable enough to leave the hospital. But they're asking about going home, especially Emma. She wants to see her house, her room, her little brother. Mae smiled at that. Marcus, he was 10 when she disappeared. He'll be 14 now, almost 15. He's been at the hospital every day. The reunion was... Voss's professional composure cracked slightly. I've worked a lot of cases. I've never seen anything like it. 4 years of grief just breaking open into joy. It was beautiful, Mae finished. Yes, they sat in silence for a moment, drinking coffee, listening to the mountain sounds around them. The community wants to honor you, Voss said eventually. There's talk of a ceremony, a commendation. The mayor wants to give you a key to the city. Mae shook her head firmly. No, I don't want any of that. Mae, I mean it. I found a cave because my dog was curious. I helped guide the search because I know the mountains. Anyone with the same knowledge would have done the same thing. I don't need recognition. I need those girls to heal and their families to find peace. That's enough, Voss studied her. You know, most people would leverage this. Book deals, speaking tours, media appearances. You could make a lot of money from your story. I don't want money, Mae said simply. I want to go back to hiking my trails with Scout and living my quiet life. I don't think that's going to be possible, Voss said gently. Not entirely. People know who you are now. They're going to remember, Mae sighed. She knew Voss was right. Her anonymous existence in Pine Ridge was over, but she could at least control how she responded to it. I'll attend the hospital when the girls are ready for visitors, Mae said. I'll answer any questions the investigation needs. Beyond that, I'm going back to my routine. Fair enough, Voss said. She stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I think you're remarkable. Your knowledge of this area, your instincts, your persistence. Without you, we might never have found them. The FBI had given up. We'd moved on to other cases. You brought us back. After Voss left, Mae sat on her porch until sunset, Scout at her feet. She thought about what the agent had said, about the role she'd played. It was true that she'd helped, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd also failed 4 years ago, when she'd seen that smoke and dismissed it. Failed every day she'd hiked these mountains without finding them. Her phone, which she'd finally turned back on, buzzed with a text message. Rebecca Miller, can I come see you? I need to talk. Just you and me, no media, no crowds, please. Mae typed back, tomorrow morning. 9 o'clock. My address is... Rebecca interrupted her reply. I know where you live. Everyone does now. I'll bring coffee. Thank you. Mae put the phone down and looked at Scout. Guess we're having company tomorrow. The dog's tail thumped against the porch boards. That night, Mae dreamed of the mountains again, but this time the dreams were different. Instead of searching frantically through endless caves, she was walking familiar trails in sunlight. Emma and Lily were ahead of her, healthy and whole, laughing about something, turning back to make sure Mae was following. In the dream, Mae called out, I'm right behind you. Keep going. And they did, disappearing around a bend in the trail, their laughter echoing back through the trees. Mae woke feeling more rested than she had in days. She made coffee, fed Scout, and was sitting on her porch when Rebecca Miller's car pulled up at exactly 9 o'clock. Rebecca got out carrying 2 cups of premium coffee from the shop in town. She looked better than she had at the command post. Still exhausted, still marked by years of grief, but with something new in her eyes. Hope, maybe, or the beginning of healing. Thank you for seeing me, Rebecca said, handing Mae one of the coffees. Of course, Mae said, gesturing to the porch chairs. They sat in silence for a few moments, sipping coffee and watching the morning light paint the mountains gold. I don't know how to thank you, Rebecca finally said. Everyone keeps telling me to thank you, but I don't know what words are big enough for giving me my daughter back. You don't need to thank me, Mae said. Yes, I do, because you didn't give up. The police gave up, the FBI gave up, most of the community gave up. They held vigils and said nice things, but they stopped believing Emma was alive. I could see it in their eyes. They thought I was delusional for still hoping. Rebecca's voice caught. But you kept looking. All those hikes, all that time in the mountains, you were still looking for her, weren't you? Mae thought about her trail journal, about the notes she'd made over the years, about the way she'd never quite stopped scanning the forest for signs of the missing girls. I suppose I was, Mae admitted. I couldn't help it. Those mountains were supposed to be safe, a place I understood. Finding out they could hide something so terrible, I needed to prove they could give up their secrets too. Emma remembers you, Rebecca said, from the hiking group you led. She said you taught her how to read moss on trees to find north, how to signal for help if she got lost. She remembered the whistle you gave all the kids. Mae's throat tightened. The whistle Emma used when they escaped from the tower. Yes, she kept it hidden for 4 years. Sutton never found it. She said it was her connection to the real world, proof that people cared about wilderness safety, that civilization still existed beyond whatever delusion he was pushing. Rebecca wiped at her eyes. You gave her that whistle 5 years ago, and it saved her life last week. They sat with that knowledge, the weight of small actions having enormous consequences. How is she? Mae asked. Really? Fragile, strong, angry, relieved, all of it at once. Rebecca smiled sadly. She's 14 years old emotionally, but she's 21 in years. She missed her entire adolescence. High school, proms, first relationships, all of it gone. And she knows it. She's trying to be brave, but I can see the grief underneath. And Lily? Quieter. The news about her mother hit hard. She's withdrawn, processing. But she and Emma are inseparable. The hospital has them in connecting rooms so they can be together. They've been each other's lifeline for 4 years. They don't know how to not be together yet. Mae nodded. That made sense. Shared trauma created bonds that others couldn't fully understand. Marcus wants to meet you too, Rebecca said. My son, he's had a hard time. His sister disappeared when he was 10. His parents divorced because we couldn't handle the grief together. He's angry at the world and doesn't trust anyone. But he keeps asking about the woman with the dog who found Emma. I think he needs to believe good people still exist. Bring him by whenever he wants, Mae said. Scout's good with kids. Rebecca smiled for the first time since arriving. He'd like that. They finished their coffee talking about smaller things. Rebecca's plans to get Emma into therapy, the difficulty of explaining 4 years of world events, the simple challenges of reintegration. When Rebecca finally left, Mae felt the weight of responsibility settle more firmly on her shoulders. These girls weren't just found. They needed to be helped back to life, and somehow Mae had become part of that process. A week after the rescue, Mae was finally allowed to visit Emma and Lily at the hospital. She'd been hesitant, unsure of what to say to 2 young women who'd survived such an ordeal, but Agent Voss had encouraged her. They keep asking about you, Voss said. Especially Emma. She wants to thank you properly. And I think seeing you might help them. A connection to the outside world that isn't medical staff or family. Mae drove to Seattle with Scout in the passenger seat. The hospital was a fortress of security. Checkpoints, identification verification, escorts through corridors. She was finally led to a private wing where the girls were housed. Emma was in the first room, sitting in a chair by the window. She'd gained a little weight in the week since rescue, and her hair had been washed and trimmed. She looked young and old at the same time, a strange combination of teenage features and eyes that had seen too much. Ms. Whitlow, Emma said, standing when Mae entered. You came. Of course I came, Mae said. How are you feeling? Emma laughed, a sound that was half humor, half disbelief. That's such a normal question. I don't know how to answer normal questions yet. She gestured to the other chair. Please sit. They told me Scout was here too. He's with the security staff. They said they'd bring him up if you wanted. I'd like that. Later, maybe? Emma settled back into her chair, studying Mae with an intensity that was slightly unsettling. I remember you from the hiking group. You taught us about the mountains. 5 years ago now, Mae said. You were a good student. You asked smart questions. I remembered what you taught us. When Sutton first took us, Emma's voice wavered but steadied. When he first took us to the cave, I remembered you saying that every place has landmarks, things that make it unique. So I started looking for them, memorizing them. I knew if I ever got a chance to tell someone where we were, I'd need to describe it accurately. Mae felt a lump in her throat. You did everything right, Emma. I don't know about that. We were captive for 4 years. That doesn't feel like doing things right. You survived. You kept Lily alive. You kept hoping. That's more than doing things right. That's extraordinary. Emma's eyes filled with tears. There were times I wanted to give up. Times when it felt easier to just believe Sutton, to accept that this was our life now. But Lily, she wouldn't let me, and I wouldn't let her. We kept each other going. The door opened, and a nurse wheeled Lily in. She looked frailer than Emma, her movements slow and careful. But when she saw Mae, her face brightened. You brought us home, Lily said softly. It was the first time Mae had heard her speak more than a few words. You led me there, Mae replied. That necklace you left, that was brilliant. Emma's idea. She said if we were being moved, we should leave a trail, just in case. We didn't know if anyone was still looking. Lily's voice was barely above a whisper. Sutton said our families had given up. That they'd moved on and didn't want us back. That was never true, Mae said firmly. Your father never stopped looking. Emma's mother never stopped hoping. The whole community, we never forgot you. Lily nodded, tears streaming down her face. Emma wheeled her chair closer and took her friend's hand. We need to ask you something, Emma said. Something that's been bothering us. The cave where you found my bracelet, how did you find it? How did Scout know to go there? Mae considered how to answer. I'm not entirely sure. Scout's tracking instincts are excellent, but that cave was so well hidden. I'd hiked past that area dozens of times over the years and never noticed it. Maybe he caught a scent. Maybe it was just chance. Sometimes I think the mountains wanted you to be found, and Scout was the tool they used. Emma smiled slightly at that. My mom would say it was God. Dad would say it was luck. I don't know what I believe anymore. You don't have to know yet, Mae said. You've got time to figure it all out. They talked for another hour, small conversations about the hospital, about Scout, about Mae's life in the mountains. The girls asked questions about Pine Ridge, about what had changed in 4 years, about people they'd known. Mae answered carefully, trying to provide information without overwhelming them. When it was time to leave, Emma stood and hugged Mae. It was awkward and desperate, the hug of someone relearning physical contact with people who weren't her captor. Thank you, Emma whispered against Mae's shoulder. Thank you for not giving up on us. Lily wheeled herself over and took Mae's hand. She didn't speak, but her grip said everything. Mae left the hospital feeling emotionally drained but purposeful. These girls had survived and they would recover. It would take time, but they had time now. That was the gift. Time to heal, time to rebuild, time to become whoever they were meant to be. On the drive home, Mae's phone rang. Agent Voss, we found something, Voss said without preamble. Linda Sutton made a mistake. She used a credit card at a gas station in Idaho. Local police picked her up an hour ago. Mae felt relief wash over her. She's in custody? Yes, she's not talking yet, but we've got her. The girls can rest easier knowing both captors are caught. What happens now? Trial preparation. Both Suttons will be charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment, and a list of other crimes. The evidence is overwhelming. They'll spend the rest of their lives in prison. Good, Mae said simply. After hanging up, Mae realized she was crying, not from sadness, but from the release of tension she'd been carrying for days. It was truly over. The girls were safe, the captors were caught, and justice would be served. She drove home through mountain roads that felt different somehow. Less threatening, more like the home she'd always known them to be. At her cabin, Mae found someone waiting on her porch. A teenage boy with shaggy brown hair and defensive posture, sitting with his arms crossed. Marcus Miller, Emma's younger brother. Your deputy down the road let me through, Marcus said as Mae got out of the truck. Said you told him family was okay to come up. I did, Mae confirmed. She let Scout out, and the dog immediately went to investigate the teenager. Marcus's defensive posture softened slightly as he reached out to pet the German shepherd. This is Scout? Marcus asked. That's him, the one who found the cave, Marcus nodded, his attention focused on the dog. I wanted to meet him, and you. Mom said you'd be okay with it. More than okay. Come inside. I'll make some coffee, or tea, if you prefer. Coffee's fine. I drink it now. Marcus said it like a challenge, like he was daring Mae to comment on his age. Mae didn't take the bait. She just led him inside and started the coffee maker. Marcus wandered around her small cabin looking at the maps on the walls, the hiking gear organized by the door, the trail journals stacked on a shelf. You really spend all your time in the mountains, he observed. Most of it, Mae agreed. It's where I'm comfortable. Emma said you taught her hiking stuff. Before. I did. 5 years ago when she was in the youth group. Marcus picked up one of Mae's trail journals, flipping through it. You write down everything. Every hike, every observation. It's a habit. Is that how you found them, looking through your notes? Mae poured 2 cups of coffee and handed one to Marcus. Partly. I'd noted seeing smoke in that area years ago. Didn't think much of it at the time, but when we found the cave, I went back through my journals and saw the connection. Marcus sat down at her kitchen table, cradling the coffee cup. I was 10 when Emma disappeared. I remember that day like it was yesterday. She was supposed to pick me up from my friend's house, but she never showed. Mom got worried, then scared, then—" His voice cracked. "Everyone kept telling me she was probably fine, that she'd turn up. But she didn't. And after a while, everyone stopped pretending." "That must have been hard," Mae said gently. "Hard doesn't even cover it. Mom fell apart. Dad left. I was just there, in the middle of everyone's grief, but nobody paid attention to mine because I was the kid who still had his life ahead of him." Marcus's hands tightened around the coffee cup. "I stopped believing she was alive about 2 years ago. Felt guilty about it, but I couldn't keep hoping forever. And now she's back. And now she's back," Marcus repeated. "And I don't know how to feel. I'm happy. I'm relieved. But I'm also angry. Angry at the guy who took her. Angry at the world. Angry at myself for giving up on her." Mae sat down across from him. "You were a child dealing with trauma. You did the best you could. Emma doesn't seem angry. She seems, I don't know, scared, but also determined, like she's going to beat this somehow." Marcus looked up at Mae. "How did she survive 4 years and not completely break?" "I don't know," Mae said honestly. "But I think having Lily there helped. They kept each other human. They reminded each other that the world outside Sutton's delusions was real." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Will she ever be normal again?" "I don't know what normal means in this situation," Mae said, "but I believe she'll build a good life. It won't be the life she would have had if this hadn't happened, but it can still be good. She's strong, Marcus, stronger than most people will ever have to be. I want to help her, but I don't know how. Just be her brother, love her, be patient with her, let her know you're there. That's all any of us can do." Marcus nodded slowly. He drank his coffee in silence for a while, then said, "Can I come back to visit you and Scout? Mom says you don't like crowds, but I need somewhere quiet sometimes, somewhere away from all the therapists and reporters and people who want to talk about feelings." Mae smiled. "You can come back any time. I'll teach you what I taught Emma if you want. How to read the mountains, how to take care of yourself out there." "I'd like that," Marcus said. And for the first time since arriving, he looked like a 15-year-old kid instead of someone carrying the weight of the world. After Marcus left, Mae sat on her porch and updated her trail journal. She wrote about the hospital visit, about Marcus, about the news that Linda Sutton had been caught. She wrote about the strange feeling of closure mixed with uncertainty about what came next. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her check. "Ms. Whitlow, this is Claire, your daughter. Mom, I saw the news. I'm so proud of what you did. Can we talk? Please." Mae stared at the message for a long time. Claire. Her daughter, who she hadn't spoken to in nearly a year, who'd drifted away into her life in Singapore, who'd given up trying to change Mae's mind about leaving the mountains. Mae typed slowly, "I'd like that." "When?" The response came immediately. "I can call tomorrow. Your time, whatever works." "I miss you, Mom." Mae felt something crack open in her chest, a different kind of grief than what she'd been carrying for the Miller and Chen families. This was her own loss, her own failure to bridge the distance with her daughter. "Tomorrow at 9 a.m. my time," Mae typed. "I miss you too." She put the phone down and looked at Scout. "Looks like we're fixing more than one broken thing, boy." That night, Mae dreamed of hiking with Claire when she was young, teaching her the same skills she'd taught the youth group years later. In the dream, Claire was laughing, pointing out landmarks, asking questions in that rapid-fire way she had as a child. When Mae woke, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope for her own healing, not just everyone else's. Mae's conversation with Claire the next morning lasted 2 hours. They talked about everything and nothing. Claire's life in Singapore, Mae's quiet existence in Pine Ridge, the years of silence between them. They didn't solve everything, but they made a start. Claire promised to visit at Christmas, just 2 months away. Mae promised to keep her phone on. It was a beginning. 3 days later, Agent Voss called with urgency in her voice. "Mae, I need you to come to the FBI field office in Seattle. Today, if possible." There's been a development. Mae made the drive with a sense of foreboding. Developments in investigations were rarely good news. At the field office, she was escorted to a conference room, where Voss waited with several other agents and Sheriff Tom Brennan. "What's happened?" Mae asked. Voss pulled out a tablet and brought up a photograph. "This was found in Michael Sutton's truck during the forensic processing. It was hidden in the glove compartment." The photo showed Emma and Lily, sitting on what looked like the porch of the hunting cabin. They appeared thin but relatively healthy, wearing clean clothes. Both girls were smiling slightly uncertainly, as if they weren't sure they were allowed to. The photo had a date stamp in the corner, 2 weeks ago, but that wasn't what made Mae's breath catch. In the background, partially visible through a window, was a third person, not Michael Sutton, who would have been taking the photo, someone else. "We enhanced the image," Voss said, pulling up a clearer version. "Mae, this changes everything." The enhanced photo showed the figure more clearly. It was Linda Sutton, Michael's sister, which they'd already known about. But she wasn't alone. Standing beside her, partially obscured but definitely there, was another person. A woman with dark hair, younger than Linda. "We've been analyzing all the evidence from the cave and cabin with this new information," Voss continued. "The handwriting samples we collected, we initially thought there were 2 distinct hands because both girls were writing. But our forensic linguist did a deeper analysis. There are actually 3 different handwriting styles in the evidence." Tom Brennan pulled out evidence bags containing various writings, the calendar markings, the diary page, the maps. "Look at this map," he said, pointing to the detailed one they'd found in the cabin. "The precision, the knowledge of the terrain. We thought it was Michael Sutton who drew this. But the handwriting doesn't match his samples from the journals we found." "Linda Sutton?" Mae asked. "No," Voss said. "We got her handwriting from old school records and employment documents. It's not hers either. There was someone else involved. A third person who knew these mountains, who helped organize the locations, who was present at least some of the time." Mae felt the room tilt slightly. "The girls? Did they mention anyone else?" "We've been re-interviewing them with this new information," Voss said. "Emma says she remembers a woman with dark hair coming to the cabin a few times. She called her the quiet one because she rarely spoke. Lily remembers her too. Says she seemed uncomfortable, like she didn't want to be there but felt obligated." "Who is she?" Mae asked. "We don't know yet, but we're going through every piece of evidence again with fresh eyes. The photo, the handwriting, any DNA or fingerprints we collected." Voss pulled up another image, a close-up of one of the maps with detailed trail notations. "Whoever this third person is, she knows these mountains extremely well. Look at these notes, warnings about seasonal flooding, marks indicating bear activity zones, shortcuts that aren't on any official maps. This is local knowledge, Mae. Deep local knowledge." Mae studied the map, her mind racing. The level of detail was impressive, more than just a casual hiker would know. This was someone who spent serious time in the backcountry, who understood the terrain the way Mae did. "Have you shown this to Emma and Lily?" Mae asked. "The enhanced photo?" "Yes," Voss said. "Lily got upset, started crying. Emma—" Voss paused. "Emma said something interesting. She said the quiet woman looked familiar, like someone she'd seen before the kidnapping. She can't place where, but she's certain she'd encountered her before." "In Pine Ridge?" Tom asked. "Possibly. We're going through old case files, re-examining everyone we interviewed 4 years ago. Women with dark hair who had connection to the area, who might have known Michael and Linda Sutton." Mae's mind was spinning. "A third person, someone local, someone with deep knowledge of the mountains. Someone who'd helped orchestrate 4 years of captivity and had remained hidden even after the rescue." "The Suttons," Mae said suddenly. "Have they said anything about this person?" "Michael refuses to talk without a lawyer, and his lawyer has advised complete silence," Voss said. "But Linda, we showed her the enhanced photo. She confirmed there was a third person involved, but won't give us a name. She says she's protecting her, that she was manipulated by Michael, just like the girls were." "Do you believe that?" Mae asked. "I don't know. Linda seems genuinely conflicted. She helped kidnap and imprison 2 teenage girls for 4 years, but she also seemed to have doubts toward the end. The girls said Linda and Michael fought frequently in the last few months. Maybe the third person was a point of conflict. Tom spread out more evidence on the table. Look at this timeline we've constructed. The cave was used first for approximately 3 years. Then they moved to the cabin for several months. Then to the fire tower more recently. But there are gaps, periods when the girls weren't at any of these locations based on the evidence we found. You think there's a 4th location? Mae asked. Possibly. Or they were moved temporarily while the next location was prepared. The third person might have been responsible for scouting new locations, preparing them. Mae looked at the map again, studying the trails and landmarks. Something nagged at her, a familiarity she couldn't quite place. The way the trails were marked, the specific notation style, it reminded her of something. Then it hit her. The Wilderness Education Program, Mae said slowly. About 7 years ago, Pine Ridge Elementary ran a wilderness education program for older students. They taught orienteering, map reading, wilderness survival. I was one of the volunteer instructors. Voss leaned forward. Go on. The way these maps are notated, the symbols for water sources, the method of marking elevations, it's the same system we taught in that program. Not everyone uses it, but anyone who went through that training would. Do you remember who else taught in the program? Tom asked. Mae closed her eyes, thinking back 7 years. There were several of us. Me, a park ranger named Steve Morrison, a teacher from the school. She stopped, her eyes opening wide. Miss Hartley, Jennifer Hartley. She taught 6th grade science, and she co-led the wilderness program with me. What did she look like? Voss asked, already pulling up records on her tablet. Late 20s, dark hair, quiet. She was new to Pine Ridge that year, had moved from somewhere in Oregon. She was passionate about outdoor education, knew the mountains well. We hiked together a few times, sharing routes and observations. Voss pulled up a photo. Is this her? Mae looked at the image, a professional headshot from a school directory. Jennifer Hartley smiling at the camera, dark hair pulled back, warm eyes. Yes, Mae said. That's her. Voss was already making calls. Within minutes, Mae learned that Jennifer Hartley had resigned from Pine Ridge Elementary 5 years ago, shortly before the girls disappeared. She'd cited family reasons and moved away. No forwarding address, no contact information on file. She taught Emma and Lily, Tom said, looking through old class records. They were both in her science class the year before they disappeared. She would have known them, known their routines, known they liked to hike to the falls. The pieces were falling into place, but the picture they created was horrifying. A trusted teacher, someone the girls would have recognized and possibly trusted, working with the Suttons to kidnap them. We need to find her, Voss said. Every resource, every database. Jennifer Hartley is now our primary person of interest. But Mae was still looking at the map, still seeing the careful notations and detailed knowledge. She's still in the area, Mae said quietly. What makes you say that? These maps were updated recently. Look at this notation about the Western Trail washout that happened last spring. Jennifer Hartley has been here, in these mountains, within the last 6 months. She never really left. Voss's expression darkened. Then she's watching. She knows we found the girls, knows we caught the Suttons, and she's gone to ground. She knows how to hide in the mountains, Mae said. I taught her half of what she knows. She could disappear into the backcountry for months if she wanted to. Then we need someone who knows the other half of what she knows, Voss said, looking directly at Mae. We need you to help us find her. Mae thought about Jennifer Hartley, the quiet woman she'd hiked with, shared trail knowledge with, trusted enough to co-teach a program with. She'd seemed so normal, so dedicated to helping children appreciate nature. How had Mae missed the darkness underneath? I'll help, Mae said. Whatever you need. Over the next few hours, Mae worked with the FBI to map out everywhere she'd hiked with Jennifer, every location they'd discussed, every piece of wilderness knowledge she'd shared. It was an exhaustive process, dredging up memories from 7 years ago and trying to find patterns. She loved the remote areas, Mae said, pointing to sections of the map. The places tourists didn't go, where you could hike all day and not see another person. She said it was where she felt most herself. Did she have favorite spots? Voss asked. Mae thought back. There was an area near Crystal Lake, about 15 miles north of here. It's accessible only by a tough trail, and even then, you need to know the route. She talked about it a lot, said it was her private sanctuary. Show me, Voss said. Mae pulled up topographical maps and marked the location. Here. There used to be an old Forest Service cabin near the lake, but it was decommissioned and supposedly demolished 20 years ago. Jennifer mentioned she'd found the foundation once, said it would be a perfect place to rebuild if you wanted complete isolation. Voss radioed the information to her team. We'll get aerial surveillance over that area, then plan a ground approach. She'll see you coming if you're not careful, Mae warned. The approach is exposed in several places. Anyone watching from the higher elevations would spot a team miles away. Then we'll need to be very careful, Voss said. She looked at Mae with a question in her eyes. Will you guide us in? Mae thought about Emma and Lily, about the 4 years they'd lost, about Jennifer Hartley's betrayal of everything education should stand for. She thought about how she'd unwittingly trained the woman who'd helped imprison 2 children. Yes, Mae said. I'll guide you in, and I'll help you bring her to justice. As the planning session continued, Mae couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something. Jennifer Hartley wasn't just hiding, she was planning something. People like her, people who'd helped orchestrate and maintain 4 years of captivity, didn't simply disappear when cornered. They adapted, they waited, and when the moment was right, they acted. Mae looked at the map of Crystal Lake and the surrounding wilderness. Somewhere in those mountains, Jennifer Hartley was watching and waiting. The question was, waiting for what? The operation to approach Crystal Lake began at dawn 2 days later. Mae had spent those 48 hours working with the FBI tactical team, planning routes, identifying vantage points, and trying to anticipate Jennifer Hartley's movements. She'd also spent time with Emma and Lily, showing them Jennifer's photo from the school directory. Emma's reaction had been immediate and visceral. That's her, Emma had said, her hands trembling. That's the quiet woman. But I knew her from before. She was my science teacher in 6th grade. She was so nice then, so encouraging. How could she... Emma couldn't finish the sentence. Lily had stared at the photo for a long time before nodding. She came to the cabin maybe 5 or 6 times. She always looked sad, like she didn't want to be there. But she still brought supplies, still helped keep us locked up. I don't understand why. Sometimes people get caught up in things, Mae had said gently. They make one bad choice, then another, and before they know it, they're in too deep to get out. But privately, Mae wasn't sure she believed her own words. Jennifer hadn't stumbled into this. She'd been teaching the girls the year before they disappeared. She'd helped plan this, prepared locations, used the knowledge Mae had shared with her to facilitate a terrible crime. The guilt of that, of having trained someone who used that training for evil, sat heavy in Mae's chest. Now, as she led the tactical team through the pre-dawn darkness toward Crystal Lake, Mae pushed those thoughts aside. Focus was what mattered. Getting this right was what mattered. The team consisted of Mae, Agent Voss, 4 FBI tactical agents, and Tom Brennan, who'd insisted on being part of the operation despite it being outside his jurisdiction. Scout was with them too. His tracking abilities might prove crucial. They moved slowly, cautiously, using the approach route Mae had mapped out. It added several miles to the journey, but kept them in the tree cover and below sightlines from the higher elevations. Tell me again about the cabin site, Voss said quietly as they paused for a water break. Foundation only. Last time I saw it 7 years ago, Mae said. But Jennifer talked about it like she'd spent time there. She knew details about the structure, where the windows had been, how the chimney was oriented. If she rebuilt anything, it would be small, low profile, designed to blend in. And the lake itself, about a 1/4 mile across, fed by snowmelt from the peaks above. The area around it is mostly forest and rock formations. Limited sight lines from the ground, but excellent visibility from the ridges above. Anyone in a rebuilt cabin would have warning long before we reached them. Voss nodded, processing the tactical implications. That's why we're coming in from below, using the creek bed approach you suggested. It's the only way to get close without being seen, Mae confirmed. But it's slow going. Lots of loose rock, areas where we'll have to climb. We've got the equipment, one of the tactical agents said. And the time. We'd rather get there unseen than fast. They continued moving. Mae's knees protested the rough terrain, but she pushed through. At 63, she was easily 20 years older than anyone else on the team. But her knowledge of this area was irreplaceable. Scout moved ahead, his nose to the ground, occasionally looking back to ensure Mae was following. Around mid-morning, his behavior changed. He stopped, head up, ears forward, staring into the forest ahead. The team halted immediately, weapons ready. "What is it, boy?" Mae whispered. Scout whined softly, then moved forward slowly, deliberately. Mae followed, the team spreading out behind her. They found it 50 yards later, a tree with fresh markings carved into the bark. Not random scratches, but deliberate symbols. The same symbols used on the maps Jennifer had helped create. "She's been here recently," Mae said, studying the marks. "These are trail markers, showing the way to the lake. She's made a path system," Voss photographed the markings. "She's either very confident or very careless, or she wants us to find her," Tom suggested grimly. Mae considered that possibility. Jennifer Hartley had evaded detection for 5 years, had helped keep 2 girls hidden for 4 of those years. She wasn't careless, which meant these markers were intentional. "We proceed with extreme caution," Voss ordered. "Assume we're being watched. Assume she's armed. Assume she's unstable." They found 3 more marked trees over the next hour, each one leading them closer to Crystal Lake. The markings were recent. The bark still showed sap in the cuts. Mae's unease grew with each marker. This felt like a trap, but they had no choice but to spring it. Jennifer Hartley needed to be brought in before she disappeared completely or did something desperate. They reached the creek bed approach in early afternoon. The going became treacherous, slick rocks, steep climbs, sections where they had to belay each other up near vertical faces. Mae's muscles screamed in protest, but she kept moving. Scout proved invaluable, finding routes that human eyes missed, alerting them to unstable sections before anyone got hurt. Finally, as the sun began its descent toward the western peaks, they caught their first glimpse of Crystal Lake through the trees. The water was perfectly still, reflecting the mountains like a mirror. And on the far shore, partially hidden by old-growth timber, was a structure, not just a foundation, an actual cabin. Small, maybe 12 by 15 feet, built from local timber and stone. Smoke rose from a chimney pipe. "She's there," Voss whispered. They observed from cover for 30 minutes, using binoculars to study the cabin and surroundings. Mae saw details that suggested long-term occupation, a vegetable garden plot, solar panels partially concealed under camouflage netting, a water collection system, trails leading to and from the cabin. "She's been living here," Mae said. "Not just hiding, living. This is a full homestead. Movement," one of the tactical agents said. "Window on the east side." They all focused their binoculars on that window. A figure passed behind the dirty glass. Definitely a woman. Dark hair, slim build. "That's her," Voss confirmed. "Jennifer Hartley is in that cabin." The team leader began coordinating positions, planning the approach. The cabin was well situated defensively, open ground in front, the lake behind, steep slopes on either side. "Anyone approaching would be exposed. We need to draw her out," the team leader said. "Get her into the open where we can safely apprehend her. I can try talking to her," Mae offered. "She knows me, trusts me, or at least she did 7 years ago," Voss shook her head. "Too dangerous. She might see you as a threat now, or she might see me as the only person who understands," Mae countered. "Let me try. If it doesn't work, your team can move in." After a tense discussion, Voss reluctantly agreed. They positioned the tactical team around the cabin at maximum cover, set up communication protocols, and gave Mae a wire so they could hear everything. Mae checked her gear one more time. made sure Scout was secured with one of the agents, and began the approach to the cabin. She walked slowly, hands visible, taking the most direct route across the open ground. She felt exposed, vulnerable, very aware that Jennifer might be watching through a rifle scope. "Jennifer," Mae called when she was about 50 yards from the cabin. "It's Mae Whitlow. I need to talk to you." No response. Mae kept walking. "Jennifer, I know you're in there. I know what happened. I know about the girls, about the Suttons, about everything. But I also know you. I know the woman who loved these mountains, who taught children to appreciate nature, who wanted to make a difference. Still nothing." Mae was 30 yards away now, close enough to see details. The handcrafted door, the stone chimney, the garden where vegetables grew in neat rows. "The girls are safe," Mae continued. "Emma and Lily are alive and recovering. They're going to be okay. But we need to understand why this happened. We need to hear your side of things." The cabin door opened. Jennifer Hartley stood in the doorway, and Mae's breath caught. The woman looked like a ghost of her former self, thin to the point of emaciation, her dark hair streaked with premature gray, her eyes hollowed by something that looked like grief or madness or both. She was holding a knife. "You shouldn't have come here, Mae," Jennifer said. Her voice was hoarse, like she hadn't used it in a while. "This is my sanctuary. The only place left in the world where I'm not a monster." "You're not a monster," Mae said, though she wasn't sure she believed it. "You're someone who made terrible choices. But it's not too late to do the right thing now." Jennifer laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "The right thing? What's that, Mae? Turn myself in? Spend the rest of my life in prison? For what? For trying to save those girls from a corrupt, poisonous world? You didn't save them, Jennifer. You imprisoned them. You stole 4 years of their lives. I protected them." Jennifer's voice rose, shrill and desperate. "Michael showed me the truth, how society destroys innocence, how children are corrupted by technology and materialism and moral decay. We were giving Emma and Lily a chance at a pure life, close to nature, away from all of that." Mae took a careful step closer. "Is that what you really believe? Because the Jennifer I knew loved teaching, loved helping children discover the world. That Jennifer would never have locked 2 girls in a cave. That Jennifer was naive," the woman said bitterly. "She thought she could make a difference within the system. But Michael showed me the system is the problem. The only way to save children is to remove them from it entirely." "Michael Sutton is delusional," Mae said firmly. "He manipulated you, Jennifer, used your idealism, your love of nature, your desire to help, and twisted it into something terrible." Jennifer's hand tightened on the knife. "You don't understand. You never had children. You never felt that desperate need to protect innocence from a world that wants to destroy it." The words hit Mae harder than expected. It was true. She'd never had more than Claire, and she'd failed at protecting their relationship. But she pushed past the pain. "I understand wanting to protect children," Mae said. "That's why I taught wilderness safety. But protection doesn't mean imprisonment, Jennifer. Those girls weren't being saved. They were suffering. They were learning to live without dependency on corrupt systems, learning self-reliance, learning the truth about nature and survival." "They were marking days on a cave wall," Mae said, her voice breaking, "crying for their mothers, getting weaker and more desperate with each passing month. That's not education, Jennifer. That's torture." Jennifer's face crumpled. For a moment, Mae saw the woman she'd known 7 years ago, the passionate teacher, the nature lover, the person who'd seemed so dedicated to helping children. "I never wanted them to suffer," Jennifer whispered. I really thought we were doing the right thing. But somewhere along the way, it became wrong, and I couldn't find a way out. Michael kept saying we just needed more time, that they'd understand eventually. And Linda, she was so committed, so certain. And I was trapped between what I knew was right and what I'd already done. "You can do the right thing now," Mae said gently. "Put down the knife. Come with me. Tell your story. Help Emma and Lily understand why this happened. Give them the closure they need." Jennifer looked at Mae with eyes full of agony. "I can't face them. I can't face what I've done." "You have to," Mae said. "Because they deserve answers. And you're the only one who can give them those answers. For a long moment, Jennifer stood frozen in the doorway. Mae could see the war playing out across her face, the desire to surrender fighting against the instinct to flee or worse. Then, slowly, Jennifer lowered the knife. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "God, Mae, I'm so sorry." The tactical team moved in, quickly, professionally. Jennifer didn't resist as they secured her, read her rights, began the process of taking her into custody. Mae watched it all from a distance, feeling utterly drained. Voss approached, putting a hand on Mae's shoulder. "You did good. You brought her in without violence, without anyone getting hurt." "That took courage," Mae nodded numbly. She'd done what needed to be done. But watching Jennifer Hartley, a woman she'd once respected, being led away in handcuffs, felt like a failure somehow. A failure to see the warning signs, to recognize the darkness lurking beneath the surface, to prevent the tragedy before it unfolded. "Mae," Voss said quietly, "this isn't your fault. You couldn't have known, but I should have," Mae said. "I'm trained to observe, to notice details. I hiked with her, taught beside her, shared my knowledge with her. How did I miss that she was capable of this?" "Because evil doesn't always look like evil," Voss replied. "Sometimes it looks like idealism, or passion, or the desire to make a difference. You're not responsible for what Jennifer Hartley chose to do with the knowledge you shared." Mae wanted to believe that. But as they began the long hike back to civilization, Jennifer Hartley in custody, and the case finally, truly closed, she carried the weight of all the might-have-beens. All the moments she could have seen more clearly, acted differently, prevented years of suffering. Scout pressed against her leg as they walked, offering silent comfort. Mae reached down to scratch his ears, grateful for his steady presence. They emerged from the wilderness as sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. A convoy of law enforcement vehicles waited at the trailhead. Along with a small crowd of press being held back by deputies, Mae saw Rebecca Miller in the crowd, and Thomas Chen, both of them watching as Jennifer Hartley was placed in a secure vehicle. Their faces showed a complex mix of emotions: relief, anger, grief, and something that might have been pity. Emma and Lily deserved to see this, Mae thought. They deserved to know that all three people responsible for their captivity were now in custody, that justice was being served, that they could truly begin to heal. As Mae climbed into Tom Brennan's vehicle for the ride home, she felt the weight of the past weeks begin to lift. It wasn't over. There would be trials, testimonies, ongoing healing for the girls and their families. But the immediate crisis was resolved. The mountains had given up their last secret. Now it was time for everyone to move forward into whatever came next. The trial began 6 months later on a cold April morning. Mae sat in the courtroom gallery, flanked by Tom Brennan on one side and Agent Voss on the other. Scout waited at home. No dogs allowed in court, unfortunately. The prosecution had decided to try all three defendants together: Michael Sutton, Linda Sutton, and Jennifer Hartley. The charges were extensive: kidnapping, false imprisonment, child abuse, conspiracy. The evidence was overwhelming. Mae had been called as a witness, scheduled to testify on the third day. But she'd come for the opening statements. Needing to see this through from the beginning, Emma and Lily sat in the front row with their families. Both girls looked healthier than they had 6 months ago. Emma had regained weight and her color had returned, while Lily, though still quiet, carried herself with more confidence. They'd been through extensive therapy, both individual and together. Their recovery was ongoing, but they were fighting their way back to life. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Catherine Chen, no relation to Lily, stood to give her opening statement. Mae watched as she laid out the case with methodical precision. 4 years, 3 months, and 17 days, Chen began, her voice carrying through the courtroom. That's how long Emma Miller and Lily Chen were held captive by these three defendants. 1,572 days of fear, isolation, and manipulation. 1,572 days stolen from their adolescence, from their education, from their families, from their lives. She walked the jury through the timeline: the initial kidnapping at the falls, the cave, the hunting cabin, the fire tower. She described the systematic isolation, the psychological manipulation, the deliberate efforts to keep the girls hidden and dependent. The defendants will claim they were protecting these girls, Chen continued. They'll tell you they were saving Emma and Lily from a corrupt society. But protection doesn't involve stun guns and locked doors. Salvation doesn't require hiding children in caves and lying to them about their families. What these three people did wasn't rescue, it was kidnapping, pure and simple. Mae watched the defendants as Chen spoke. Michael Sutton sat rigid, his face expressionless, showing no emotion. Linda Sutton kept her eyes down, her hands folded in her lap, occasionally wiping at tears. And Jennifer stared straight ahead. But Mae could see the trembling in her shoulders, the way she gripped the edge of the table as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. The defense attorneys presented their opening statements next. Michael's lawyer argued diminished capacity due to mental illness. Linda's lawyer painted her as a victim of her brother's manipulation, someone who'd been psychologically coerced into participating. And Jennifer's lawyer, Mae, listened with growing discomfort as he described Jennifer as an idealist who'd been groomed and controlled by Michael Sutton, someone who genuinely believed she was helping the girls. It wasn't entirely untrue, Mae thought, but it also wasn't an excuse. The first 2 days of testimony focused on the technical aspects, the FBI investigation, the evidence collected, the forensic analysis. Agent Voss spent hours on the stand, methodically describing every piece of evidence, every location, every step of the search. On the third day, Mae was called to testify. She walked to the witness stand with steady steps, though her heart was racing. She'd testified in court before, small cases, property disputes, expert witness work about mountain conditions. But this was different. This mattered in a way those other cases hadn't. The prosecutor guided Mae through her testimony, her discovery of the cave, her work with the investigation, her knowledge of the terrain that had helped locate the other sites. Mae spoke clearly, sticking to facts, avoiding emotional language. Then came cross-examination. Jennifer's defense attorney stood, his expression sympathetic. "Miss Whitlow, you knew my client 7 years ago, correct?" "Yes," Mae said. "We co-taught a wilderness education program. And during that time, what was your impression of Jennifer Hartley?" Mae chose her words carefully. She seemed dedicated to teaching, passionate about nature and outdoor education. Did she ever show signs of violence? Of instability? No. Did she ever express any concerning views about children or education? "Not that I recognized at the time," Mae said honestly. "So from your perspective, she was a normal, caring teacher?" "She appeared to be, yes," the attorney nodded. "Ms. Whitlow, you shared extensive knowledge about these mountains with my client, didn't you? Trail systems, hidden locations, survival techniques?" Mae felt a chill. "I shared information relevant to outdoor education, yes. In fact, you showed her many of the same areas where the girls were later held, didn't you? The region near the old fire lookout, the hunting cabin area? We hiked in those general regions," Mae admitted. "So it's fair to say that by sharing your expertise with Jennifer Hartley, you unknowingly provided her with the tools and knowledge used in this crime." "Objection." The prosecutor stood. "Counsel is badgering the witness and trying to shift blame." "Sustained," the judge said. "Rephrase, counselor, but the damage was done." Mae felt the weight of those words, that she'd provided the tools for this crime. It was a thought that had haunted her for months, now spoken aloud in open court. The attorney continued more carefully. "Ms. Whitlow, is it possible that Jennifer Hartley was manipulated by Michael Sutton? That she was drawn into something that spiraled beyond her control?" Mae thought about Jennifer at Crystal Lake, the brokenness in her voice when she'd said she couldn't find a way out. "It's possible," Mae said quietly. "But possibility doesn't remove responsibility. She made choices. Every day for 4 years, she chose not to free those girls." The attorney looked like he wanted to argue, but thought better of it. "No further questions." Mae stepped down from the witness stand, feeling emotionally raw. As she returned to her seat, she caught Jennifer's eyes. The woman mouthed 2 words, "I'm sorry." Mae looked away. The testimony that followed was harder to watch. The forensic psychologist who'd evaluated the girls described the trauma they'd endured, the long-term effects they'd face. A wilderness survival expert explained how the defendants had used knowledge of the terrain to evade detection. Rebecca Miller took the stand and spoke through tears about the 4 years of not knowing, the toll it had taken on her family, her marriage, her son. But the most powerful testimony came on day 5, when Emma Miller herself took the stand. The courtroom went completely silent as Emma walked forward. She was 21 now, legally an adult, though she'd been robbed of the years that should have taught her how to become one. She wore a simple blue dress and her hair was pulled back. Her hands shook as she placed them on the Bible to be sworn in. The prosecutor approached gently. "Emma, can you tell the jury what happened on September 14th, 4 years ago?" Emma took a breath. "Lily and I went to hike to the falls. We'd done it dozens of times. It was our favorite spot. On the way back, we found a man on the trail. He said he'd fallen and hurt his ankle. Asked if we could help him to his car. Did you recognize this man?" "No, but he seemed harmless. Just a hurt hiker." So we helped him." Emma's voice wavered. "Then he pulled out something. I didn't know what it was then, but I learned later it was a stun gun. Everything went black. What's the next thing you remember?" "Waking up in a cave. It was dark and cold and I couldn't understand where I was. Lily was there too, unconscious. We were chained to the wall. The courtroom was absolutely still. Mae saw jurors wiping their eyes," Emma continued, describing the first days in the cave, the fear, the confusion. Michael Sutton's visits, where he explained they were being saved from corruption. His insistence that their families had stopped looking for them. "Did you believe him?" the prosecutor asked. "At first, no, but months went by and nobody found us. He kept saying our parents had moved on, that the search had been called off, that we'd been forgotten. After a while, part of me started to wonder if maybe it was true." Emma's voice broke. The not knowing was almost worse than the captivity. Not knowing if anyone was still looking, not knowing if we'd been given up on. "Tell us about the other defendants." "Linda Sutton and Jennifer Hartley." Emma looked directly at Linda and Jennifer. "Linda came to the cabin sometimes. She brought supplies, helped Michael move us between locations. She always said she was sorry, that it wouldn't be much longer, but she never let us go. And Miss Hartley," Emma's voice hardened. "She was my teacher. I trusted her. And when I saw her at the cabin that first time, I thought she was there to rescue us. But she just stood there while Michael explained the rules. She didn't save us. She helped keep us prisoner." Jennifer Hartley was openly crying now, her face in her hands. "Emma," the prosecutor said gently, "how did you survive 4 years of captivity?" Emma looked at Lily, who sat in the front row. "We survived together. We made calendars to track time. We told each other stories about what we'd do when we got out, because we refused to believe we wouldn't get out someday. We reminded each other of our families, our real lives, everything good that existed outside those walls. And we never stopped hoping that someone would find us. And someone did." "Yes," Emma said, looking at Mae. "Ms. Whitlow found us. She and her dog Scout. They never gave up." Even when everyone else had. Mae felt tears on her own cheeks now. The cross-examination was brief. None of the defense attorneys wanted to appear to attack a sympathetic victim. Emma's testimony stood, powerful and damning. When the trial recessed for the day, Mae stepped outside for air. Emma and Lily were there with their families, surrounded by victim advocates and security. Emma broke away from the group and approached Mae. "Thank you for being here," Emma said. "For testifying. For everything. You're the brave one," Mae said. "What you did in there today, that took more courage than anything I did. I wanted them to understand what they did to us," Emma said. "Not just the facts, but what it felt like. The fear, the isolation, the way they tried to make us doubt our own memories and feelings. I needed the jury to know." "They know," Mae assured her. "Everyone in that courtroom knows." Lily joined them, still quiet but present. She didn't speak, but she took Mae's hand and squeezed it, a gesture that said more than words could. The trial continued for another week. Lily testified, her quiet voice somehow more powerful than shouting as she described the isolation, the fear, the way the defendants had systematically tried to break down her sense of reality. Thomas Chen spoke about losing his wife to grief-induced illness, about the years of not knowing, about the daughter he'd thought he'd never see again. The defense presented their case, psychiatrists who testified about Michael Sutton's delusional disorder, character witnesses who spoke about Linda's gentle nature before her brother's influence, colleagues who described Jennifer as a dedicated teacher who'd never shown signs of violence, but nothing could overcome the weight of evidence and the testimony of two survivors who'd lived through 4 years of captivity. On the final day, both sides gave closing arguments. The prosecutor was devastating in her summary, walking the jury through every piece of evidence, every day of captivity, every choice the defendants had made. The defense wants you to believe these 3 people were victims themselves, Chen said. Victims of delusion, of manipulation, of circumstance. But Emma Miller and Lily Chen are the real victims here. Teenage girls stolen from their families, hidden in caves and cabins, denied their education, their freedom, their fundamental human rights. And these defendants, she pointed at Michael, Linda, and Jennifer, chose to do that. Every single day for 4 years, they chose to keep those girls imprisoned. Jennifer's attorney made one last attempt to paint her as a victim of Michael's manipulation, someone who'd gotten in too deep and couldn't escape. But even Mae could see the jury wasn't buying it. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the courtroom was packed. Mae sat with Scout this time. Special permission had been granted for the verdict reading, recognizing Scout's role in the rescue. The dog sat calmly at Mae's feet, occasionally looking up at her with those intelligent brown eyes. The foreman stood. On the charge of kidnapping in the 1st degree, we find the defendant Michael Sutton guilty, Rebecca Miller gasped, gripping her ex-husband David's hand. Thomas Chen closed his eyes, tears streaming down his face. On the charge of kidnapping in the 1st degree, we find the defendant Linda Sutton guilty. Linda's shoulders shook with sobs. Her attorney put a hand on her arm. On the charge of kidnapping in the 1st degree, we find the defendant Jennifer Hartley guilty. Jennifer sat motionless, staring straight ahead as the guilty verdicts continued for every charge: false imprisonment, child abuse, conspiracy. When the foreman finished, all 3 defendants had been convicted on all counts. The judge set sentencing for 2 weeks later. Mae felt something release in her chest, a tension she'd been carrying since the day Scout had led her to that cave. Justice wasn't the same as healing, but it was a necessary step on the path toward it. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Mae avoided them, but Emma and Lily, with their family's support, had decided to make a brief statement. Emma stood at a microphone, Lily beside her, both families behind them. Mae watched from the edge of the crowd. 4 years ago, 3 people decided they had the right to take our lives, Emma said, her voice steady. They decided they knew what was best for us, better than we did, better than our families did. They were wrong, and today justice was served. She paused, looking at Lily, who nodded encouragement. We want to thank everyone who never gave up on us, Emma continued. The FBI, the local police, the search teams, and especially Mae Whitlow and her dog Scout. Because of them, we're standing here today. We're alive, we're healing, and we have our futures back. Lily spoke then, her voice soft but clear. To anyone out there who's been through something like this, or who's still going through it, don't give up hope. People are looking for you. People care. And one day you'll be free too. The statement was brief but powerful. Reporters shouted questions as the families retreated to waiting vehicles, but they didn't answer. They'd said what they needed to say. Mae returned home to her cabin as sunset painted the mountains in shades of gold and purple. She sat on her porch with Scout, watching the light fade, thinking about everything that had happened since that foggy morning when Scout had led her to a hidden cave. Her phone rang. Claire calling from Singapore, as she did every week now since they'd reconnected. Mom, I saw the verdict on the news, Claire said. How are you feeling? Relieved, Mae said honestly. And tired. And grateful it's over. I'm proud of you, Mom. What you did, finding those girls, helping bring their captors to justice. It matters. It really matters. Mae felt warmth spread through her chest. Thank you, sweetheart. That means a lot. I'm still coming for Christmas, right? I want to meet Scout properly. And see these mountains you're always talking about. I'll be here, Mae promised. I'll take you on the trails, show you my favorite spots, maybe teach you some wilderness skills, Claire laughed. Just don't turn me into another outdoors woman. I'd like my creature comforts too much. No promises, Mae said, smiling. After they hung up, Mae pulled out her trail journal, the leather cover now more worn than ever, the pages filled with notes from the most intense months of her life. She turned to a fresh page and began to write. April 22. The trial ended today. Guilty verdicts on all counts for all three defendants. Emma and Lily spoke to the press. Strong, articulate, healing. They're going to be okay. It will take time, but they're going to be okay. I've been thinking about what it means to find something you weren't looking for. I went into those mountains, seeking peace and solitude, familiar trails and quiet observations. Instead, I found two girls who needed rescue, found community that needed healing, and found connections I'd let slip away. Scout is sleeping at my feet. Claire is planning her Christmas visit. Emma and Lily are reclaiming their lives. The mountains are still here, still beautiful, still full of secrets, but they've given up the one that mattered most. Tomorrow, I'll hike the Ridge Trail, the one I was on the morning everything changed. I'll mark the location of the cave in my permanent records, not to remember the horror of what happened there, but to remember that even the darkest secrets can be brought into light. Some mysteries are meant to be solved. Some lost things are meant to be found. And sometimes, an old woman with a good dog can make a difference in ways she never imagined. The mountains are calling, as they always do, as they always will. And I'll answer, because that's what I do. But now I know, I'm not just walking these trails for myself anymore. I'm walking them for Emma and Lily, for all the mysteries that still need solving, for all the people who might need finding. The work isn't over. It never really is. But today, justice was served. Today, two young women stood in front of cameras and told the world they survived. Today was a good day. Mae closed the journal and looked at Scout, ready for that walk, boy. Scout's tail thumped against the porch boards. They set out into the twilight, Mae and her faithful companion walking the familiar trails that had led to so much. The air was cool and pine-scented, the sounds of the forest settling into evening rhythms. Mae's knees ached slightly, her age making itself known, but she moved with the confidence of someone who knew every root and rock on this path. Somewhere ahead, an owl called. Scout's ears perked up, but he stayed at Mae's side. "Good boy," Mae said, reaching down to scratch his head. "Good boy." The trail wound upward through the trees, and Mae followed it into the gathering dark, at peace with the mountains and with herself for the first time in years. 3 weeks after the verdict, Mae stood in her cabin preparing for visitors. The place had been thoroughly cleaned. Fresh coffee was brewing, and she'd even baked cookies, something she hadn't done in years. Scout watched her bustle around with amused tolerance, his tail wagging whenever she passed. The knock came at exactly 10 o'clock. Mae opened the door to find Emma and Lily standing on her porch, both smiling. "Come in," Mae said warmly. "I made coffee. And cookies, though I can't promise they're any good. I'm sure they're perfect," Emma said, stepping inside. Lily followed, looking around the cabin with quiet interest. They settled on the porch with their coffee, watching the morning sun illuminate the mountain peaks. The girls had requested this visit, just the three of them, no families, no therapists, no officials. Just a quiet morning with the woman who'd found them. "The sentencing is next week," Emma said after a while. "They're expecting life sentences for all three. How do you feel about that?" Mae asked. Emma considered the question. "Satisfied, I guess. They took 4 years of our lives. It seems fair that they lose the rest of theirs," Lily spoke up, her voice still soft but growing stronger. "I don't hate them anymore. I did, for a long time. But my therapist says hate gives them power over me, and I don't want them to have that. So I'm choosing to let it go." "That's very wise," Mae said. "I'm not there yet," Emma admitted. "I'm still angry. Maybe I always will be. But Lily's right. I can't let that anger define the rest of my life. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping coffee and listening to the forest sounds. We brought you something, Lily said, pulling a small package from her bag. Both of us worked on it. Mae unwrapped the package carefully. Inside was a framed photograph. Emma and Lily, healthy and smiling, standing on a mountain trail with peaks visible behind them. Both girls wore hiking boots and carried backpacks. Scout was in the photo too, sitting proudly between them. We went hiking last week, Emma explained. First time back on the trail since everything. We wanted to prove to ourselves that we could still love the mountains, even after what happened in them. And we wanted you to have a picture, Lily added. To remember that we're okay, that we're healing, that what you did mattered. Mae felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you. This means more than you know. There's something else, Emma said. She pulled out a familiar object, the emergency whistle Mae had given her 5 years ago in the youth hiking group. I want you to have this back. It saved my life. I kept it hidden for 4 years, and when we were escaping from the tower, I used it to signal you. I think it should be with you now. Mae took the whistle, feeling the weight of everything it represented. Preparation, meeting opportunity, hope, meeting rescue. The past connecting to the future in ways no one could have predicted. I'll treasure it, Mae said. They talked for another hour about the girls' plans for the future. Emma's intention to go to college to study psychology so she could help other trauma survivors. Lily's interest in art therapy and her beautiful drawings that were helping her process her experiences. They talked about their family's healing, about Marcus's growing confidence now that his sister was home, about Thomas Chen's gratitude for having his daughter back even though his wife hadn't lived to see it. We're going to be okay, Emma said as they prepared to leave. It's going to take time, and we'll always carry scars. But we're going to build good lives. We're going to be happy. We refuse to let what happened to us be the end of our story. It's just a chapter. A terrible chapter, but not the end. Mae hugged them both goodbye, watching as they drove away in Emma's new car, bought with money from a victims' compensation fund. Her first taste of adult independence after they left. Mae sat on her porch, holding the whistle and looking at the photograph. Scout rested his head on her knee, and she scratched behind his ears, absently. Her phone buzzed with a text from Agent Voss. Coffee next week. Want to discuss something? Mae smiled and typed back, Wednesday work? Perfect. See you then. Over the following weeks, life settled into a new rhythm. Mae still hiked her trails with Scout, still filled her journal with observations and reflections. But now she also had regular visits from Emma and Lily, weekly calls with Claire, and an occasional consulting role with the FBI on cold cases involving missing persons in wilderness areas. Agent Voss had approached her about it, officially using Mae's knowledge of mountain terrain and her instincts to help with other cases. Mae had agreed, finding purpose in the idea that her skills could help bring other missing people home. Marcus Miller had become a regular visitor too, learning wilderness skills from Mae the way his sister had years ago. He was a quick study, absorbing information about navigation, wildlife, survival techniques. Mae saw him slowly healing as he spent time in the mountains, learning to see them as places of beauty rather than places that had stolen his sister. Claire came for Christmas as promised, bringing her husband Michael, a kind man who loved his wife despite her mother's initial reservations about him living so far away. They spent 2 weeks in Pine Ridge, hiking the easier trails, sharing meals at Mae's cabin, reconnecting in ways they hadn't managed in years. I understand now, Claire said one evening as they sat by the fireplace. Why you stayed here. Why you couldn't leave. These mountains, they're part of you. They are, Mae agreed. But you're part of me too. I'm sorry I let so much distance grow between us. We both did, Claire said. But we're fixing it now. That's what matters. On a cold January morning, 6 months after the trial, Mae hiked to the ridge trail where Scout had first led her to the cave. The entrance had been sealed by the Forest Service, not erased but marked and closed. A small plaque installed noting that this was the location where Emma Miller and Lily Chen had been found after 4 years of captivity. Mae stood before the plaque, reading the inscription, "In memory of resilience, hope, and the power of never giving up. May no one else endure what happened here. May all who are lost be found." She placed her hand on the cool metal, thinking about that foggy morning that had changed everything. Then she turned away, calling Scout, and headed back down the trail toward home. The mountains stretched out before her in all directions, familiar and beautiful and full of their own stories. Some of those stories were dark, some were joyous. All of them were part of the tapestry of this place Mae loved. She thought about Emma and Lily, thriving now in their healing. She thought about Claire, planning a summer visit and talking about maybe bringing future grandchildren to see these mountains someday. She thought about all the people she'd helped, all the connections she'd made, all the ways her quiet life had expanded in unexpected directions. At 64 years old, Mae Whitlow had learned that it's never too late for things to change. That isolation isn't the same as peace. That sometimes the things you find when you're not looking are the things you needed most. She reached her cabin as afternoon light slanted through the pines. Inside, her trail journal waited on the table, ready for her to record the day's observations. Her phone would ring soon, Emma checking in, or Marcus asking about their next hiking lesson, or Agent Voss with details about a new case. Mae smiled to herself, filled Scout's water bowl and started a pot of coffee. She pulled out her journal and began to write. January 15th, clear skies, cold but beautiful. Visited the cave site today. The plaque is well placed, respectful. Scout was calm there, no distress, just acknowledgement. I've been thinking about what it means to be found. Emma and Lily were found physically, pulled from captivity into freedom. But I was found too in a different way. Found by a dog who wouldn't let me stop looking. Found by 2 girls who needed my help. Found by my daughter, who refused to let our relationship die despite distance and stubbornness. Found by a community that needed healing and somehow saw me as part of that process. We find each other in the end. That's what humans do. We lose our way. We get trapped in caves, both literal and metaphorical, and then, if we're lucky, if we keep hoping, if we don't give up, someone finds us. Or we find them. Or we find ourselves. The mountains are quiet today. The kind of quiet I used to think I needed. But I understand now that there are different kinds of quiet. The quiet of isolation and the quiet of peace. The quiet of running away and the quiet of coming home. I'm home now. Finally fully home. Not just to these mountains, but to myself. To connection. To purpose. Tomorrow, Marcus is coming by to learn advanced navigation techniques. Next week, Agent Voss wants to consult on a case in Oregon. Claire is sending photos of Singapore, trying to convince me to visit someday. Life is full again. Not in the overwhelming way I once feared, but in the way a stream fills after winter snowmelt. Natural, necessary, life-giving. Scout is sleeping by the fire. The coffee is brewing. The mountains stand eternal outside my window. And somewhere out there, Emma and Lily are living the lives they were meant to live, reclaiming every day that was stolen from them. This is what it means to heal. This is what it means to find your way home. The work continues. The mountains call, and I answer because that's what I do. Not alone anymore, but part of something larger, a community, a purpose, a story that's still being written. Some mysteries are solved. Some lost things are found, and sometimes an old woman with a good dog changes the world, one trail at a time. The sun is setting now, painting the peaks in gold and rose. Scout is stirring, ready for our evening walk. Time to close this journal and step back into the world, the beautiful, complicated, connected world that I'm so grateful to be part of. Tomorrow will bring what it brings, but today was good. Today, I walked the mountains I love with peace in my heart and purpose in my steps. Today, I knew that I was exactly where I belonged. That's enough. That's everything. Mae closed her journal and stood, stretching muscles that were 64 years old, but still strong enough to climb mountains. Scout was already at the door, tail wagging, ready for their evening routine. "Come on, boy," Mae said, grabbing her jacket. "Let's go see what the mountains have to tell us tonight." They stepped out into the golden light of sunset. Woman and dog, walking side by side on trails that had led to sorrow and joy, to loss and finding, to mystery and resolution. The mountains rose around them, eternal and beautiful, keeping their remaining secrets but having surrendered the most important one. And Mae Whitlow, daughter and mother, teacher and student, rescuer and rescued, walked among them with gratitude and peace. The story had found its ending. But the journey, the daily walk through wilderness and wonder, through connection and healing, that journey would continue as long as Mae had strength to walk and mountains to explore. And that was exactly how it should be.